Chapter 4161. The God Realm naturally has a god, otherwise why would it be called the God Realm? The gloomy and sticky voice sneered, this god is the supreme god that everyone in the God Realm revered. Isn't it your honor that this god has taken a fancy to you? In the future, if you can live to the extent that this god can't bear to kill you, this god can bring you back to the God Realm and let you step onto the altar. That tone was filled with arrogance and complacency. The tone was filled with charity. Yi-Ching Luo still had no expression on her face. She was secretly calculating that person's words. She could tell. That person's arrogance came from his bones. It didn't seem like he was lying. God Realm. Supreme God. This was indeed an irresistible temptation of the EMO. After all, which cultivator in the world didn't want to step into the God Realm? Didn't want to become a god? The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and there was a faint flash of light in her eyes. This light didn't avoid the owner of the blood bones. That person thought that Yi-Ching Luo was moved, and continued in a gloomy and cold voice, as for why this god is in the Earth Realm, this point, as long as you are willing to be my slave, you will naturally know. The words had reached this point. Yi-Ching Luo also knew that there was no way to find out more information from that person's mouth. Currently she could confirm a few points. The other party came from the God Realm, and his status was noble, the supreme god of the God Realm. The reason why he was in the Earth Realm was unknown. But the only thing she could be sure of was that the other party needed a powerful cultivator, or a special human's flesh and blood to maintain his power. Or, like the former King of Darkness, he needed to break the seal. Densely packed blood bones. And it could directly suck people and swallow them. When it sucked people, the surroundings emitted a faint silver light. It was a little strange. If she wanted to confirm what the supreme god of the God Realm needed, the reason why it was compatible with a certain power body. Only by finding the similarities between the three mysterious fairies and the previous mysterious fairies. Young lady, this god is not asking for your opinion. You are the body that this god has taken a fancy to, you can't escape. The gloomy and cold voice was like a venomous snake. Even the blood bones that were embedded into the flesh became more entangled. When the blood bone fused with her flesh and blood, Yi-Ching Luo felt that there was something in her body which was swiftly draining away. Yi-Ching Luo's eyes turned cold. All the dark force in his body burst forth. The thick and vigorous energy swept through the surrounding air, stirring up fiercely. Although she couldn't break free from the man's grip, she was still able to resist. However, it also made the blood bone loosen its grip a little. The feeling of something being drained from his body also disappeared in an instant. Yi-Ching Luo's complexion was slightly pale and her pupils were extremely sharp. Little girl, you want to resist me? The sticky voice was mixed with a hoarse sneer, like a sharp saw that was rubbing against each other. If it weren't for the worry of breaking your new slave, this god would really like to see how far you can resist. His tone was filled with excitement and madness. Yi-Ching Luo's fingers clenched tightly. The profound phoenix ring on his fingertip left a deep mark on his skin. Suddenly, the profound phoenix ring heated up. Yi-Ching Luo's eyes lit up and the expression on her face also became gentle. Slave, obediently inherit the Ling Long Palace and become the lord of the Ling Long Palace. As for the follow-up mission, this god will issue it to you. The gloomy voice didn't seem to sense the change in Yi-Ching Luo's emotions. Chapter 4162. After finishing this sentence, Yi-Ching Luo then felt the blood bone wrapping around her body, pushing her bit by bit towards a certain direction. In the darkness, Yi-Ching Luo couldn't see the direction she was being pushed towards. But she could roughly guess. The other party was trying to push her away from this black hole. Yi-Ching Luo's eyes flashed slightly. If she left this black hole now, Everything he had done just now would be for naught. Yiqing Luo's fingertips clenched tightly. He could feel the profound phoenix ring embedded in his finger. Her lips curled as her voice suddenly became ridiculing and disdainful. "Senior, aren't you a little too impatient? I've never agreed to be your slave." That pushing force suddenly paused, as the gloomy cold voice became hurried and ruthless. "Young lady, you don't have the right to choose. Everything you've said is merely your side of the story." Yiqing Luo sneered. "You don't even dare to show your real face, and only know how to hide like a dark rat. If I let you be my slave, I would despise you for being a coward." Her words were filled with ridicule. "How dare you be so rude in front of this god?" That gloomy and sticky voice suddenly exploded with rage, as though it couldn't control its own emotions. That originally loose blood bone once again gathered together. Beside her ear was the cold and ruthless voice of the master of the blood bone. "Do you really think this god can't bear to kill you?" Perhaps the other party had never experienced such a situation before, and had never suffered such disrespectful treatment. That voice sounded even more gloomy and cold. When the blood bone was deeply embedded, Yiqing Luo felt that the blood bone was like a huge suction cup, sucking on her body. That feeling of something being drained from her body struck her once again. What this god is interested in is merely this body which can bear this god's power after obtaining your body. Whether you live or die is not important. The master of the blood bone laughed cruelly. "This god doesn't have to have you, don't think too highly of yourself." Yiqing Luo had a feeling of being placed in an ice cellar. Her four limbs were entangled with no way to struggle. She could only allow the coldness to corrode her body and mind. And that feeling of something being drained continuously. She took a deep breath and suppressed the pain. Word by word, he spat out from between his slightly pale teeth, "If you want my body, you can try." The provocative words enraged the owner of the blood bone. The powerful dark light quickly filled the entire space. Intertwining with those sharp blood bones made Yiqing Luo feel even more pain. Just then, suddenly, an extremely faint stream of light appeared in the air. Immediately after, Yiqing Luo felt a gush of warmth enveloping her. The sensation that was tightly attached to her body also left her body. What replaced it was a thick and warm chest. The man's clear and melodious voice, like the babbling of flowing water, faintly sounded. Body. Who is it?" That cold voice roared. All around, one could hear the rustling sound of the densely packed bloody bones scurrying about. Although Yiqing Luo couldn't see who it was. However, the elegant scent of sandalwood made her feel at ease. He instantly recognized the man who had rushed over. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile. From feeling the aura from the profound phoenix ring, Yiqing Luo knew that her Xian had arrived. Yes. Chapter 4163. At that moment, Yiqing Luo specially took a look at Dmo Xian. It was to pass on her own plan. Only when she was brought away by the Linglong Palace Lord would she be able to find out the real motive of the Linglong Palace Lord and from there lead out the mastermind. As long as she knew who the mastermind was, everything would be much easier to settle. As long as there were no accidents. The profound phoenix ring and profound dragon ring's connection could totally allow Dmo Xian to follow the aura to find her. Just one gaze had explained so many things. Luckily, she and Dmo Xian had a tacit understanding. Dmo Xian hugged the young lady's slender body tightly as his chilly peach blossom eyes swept across the boundless darkness. His gaze turned colder by several degrees. With a wave of his sleeves, a strong wind blew out. Profound energy pervaded every corner of the surroundings. Yiqing Luo suddenly felt her eyes lighting up. She immediately raised her little head from Dmo Xian's embrace. She saw the man's floating profound energy spreading out, and wherever it went, it blew away pieces of pitch black like ink. Just like sunlight, chasing away all the darkness. The surrounding scenery became clearer bit by bit. The space under the illumination was not like the faint glow which was emitted when the blood bones swallowed the Ling Long Palace Lord. Yiqing Luo could see the horrifying scene around her even more clearly. The blood bones, which were dripping with blood, were like a spider web, spreading across the entire space. Other than the position where Dmo Xian was hugging her, the surrounding 2 steps radius, the rest of the space, were all covered. And what made Yiqing Luo most shocked was, in the middle of the sky full of blood bones, hung a head. A man's head. His age was around 40 or so, with handsome features. She could tell that he was a handsome man when he was young. That head's eyes stared straight at their direction. Who are you? How dare you trespass into this god's territory? That head's mouth opened and closed. That voice was exactly the same as the icy cold and sticky feeling which Yiqing Luo heard earlier. It's him. This head was the owner of the blood bones. The mastermind behind Ling Long Palace. Why would he have such an image? As though sensing Yiqing Luo's gaze, that head looked towards her with a sinister look. Young lady, it's you. These are the reinforcements you've brought. His tone was full of ridicule. Naive. I am a supreme god of the divine world. How dare you, a bunch of ants, try to contend against me? The head's voice fell. The blood bones from all directions quickly gathered towards the 2 of them. But before he could get within 2 steps of the 2 of them, the densely packed bloody bones seemed to be blocked by something, and all of them piled up in the air. One bloody bone after another, one after another. They surrounded the 2 of them, almost forming a wall. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but shiver. Although the blood bones couldn't get close to her. But seeing so many bloody bones piled up in front of him, just the thought of it gave him goosebumps. Dmo Xian naturally felt the slight tremble of the person in his arms. His eyes darkened. He opened his palm and gently stroked the girl's slender back. The thick palm and the scorching temperature soothed the discomfort in the girl's heart. The sleeve of his other hand fluttered. Ka, cha, rumble, a vast aura suddenly exploded. The majestic profound energy rushed against the blood bones. Chapter 4164. You, who exactly are you? The expression on the head's face was twisted to the point where it couldn't be any more twisted. It was hideous and terrifying. There was a hint of disbelief in his cold eyes. The man in front of him was dressed in a purple robe like flowing clouds, unparalleled and peerless. That pair of inky black eyes were pitch black. His gaze was calm, without any extra emotions. But just one look and a feeling of fear and awe arose from the bottom of his heart. Awe. When had he ever had such a feeling? He was the high and mighty god of the god realm, how could he be in awe of anyone? But, he was very clear. This man, just a casual lift of his hand and he was able to completely break his indestructible blood bones. His strength was absolutely not weak. Who was this man? Bloodbone Barbaric King. The man opened his thin lips slightly and spat out these 4 words, which made the expression on the head completely stiffen. The head's shocked and incredulous expression had been replaced by a gloomy ruthlessness. His eyes were covered with a layer of frost. The ice-sealed sharp gaze seemed to turn into a sharp blade and cut the opponent's heart. Who are you? Why do you know this god's name? His sticky voice was even colder. Dmo Xian replied indifferently, I once heard that the Bloodbone Barbaric King privately used the divine body as nourishment to extend his life and enhance his own strength. This caused chaos in the god realm. The Emperor of the God Emperor sent an army to suppress it, but they became nourishment for the Bloodbone Barbaric King and were completely annihilated. Following Dmo Xian's words, That head's expression became more and more gloomy. In the end, his entire head hung low. His long hair hung loosely at the side of his body, concealing his emotions. But it could be seen. Because of Dmo Xian's words, he recalled the past that had long been buried in the deepest part of his heart, unwilling to dig out. But suddenly, Dmo Xian took another turn. After the army was annihilated, the Emperor of the God Emperor personally went into battle and annihilated you. Annihilated? That meant he didn't even have the chance to reincarnate. Yi Qing Luo was puzzled. If the blood-bone barbaric king was really annihilated, how could he possibly appear in the Earth realm? Could it be that the Divine Emperor did not really kill the blood-bone barbarian king? And after the Divine Emperor passed away, the blood-bone barbarian king quietly escaped? No, this isn't right. How could the Divine Emperor make such a mistake if he personally took action? The Divine Emperor would have personally confirmed that the blood-bone barbarian king had been annihilated. Under the eyes of the Divine Emperor, the blood-bone barbarian king had no choice but to secretly do something like this. Ha! I didn't expect that after tens of thousands of years, someone would still remember me. That head. No, it should be called the barbaric blood-bone king now. He laughed sinisterly, his face filled with ridicule. You are someone from the God realm. No. Dmo Xian glanced at him indifferently. Barbaric blood-bone king, you built the Ling Long Palace in the Earth realm and controlled the entire Earth realm. Your motive is to reappear in the world, right? Ha ha ha. The barbaric blood-bone king laughed loudly, but in his laughter, there was a chilling intent: reappear in the world. This god's biggest motive is. This god wants to attack back into the god realm and let that bastard have a taste of all the pain this god had suffered. Attack back into the god realm. Chapter 4165. Was the barbaric blood king sure that he was not joking? God realm. That was the god realm. Was it something that could be attacked as one wished? Could it be that he had stayed in the dark for too long and his brain had rusted? You want to seek revenge from the sovereign of God Emperors? Dmo Xian could hear the hatred in the barbaric blood king's words. The barbaric blood king sneered as his blood bones started to make a cracking sound. Yes. This god wants to trample that bastard under my feet. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. The barbaric blood king's reaction was obviously too intense. This kind of hatred was not only because he had been defeated by the sovereign of God Emperors. It looked like the former sovereign of God Emperors and the barbaric blood king must have had a past. Before Yi Qing Luo could imagine a big piece of melodramatic story in her mind. The man's low and indifferent voice came into her ears. Perhaps your expectations are going to be disappointed. The barbaric blood king's expression suddenly sunk. What do you mean? The sovereign of God Emperors had already passed away not long after you turned into ashes. Dmo Xian said. As soon as these words left his mouth, the expression on the face of the head embedded in the bloody bones seemed to freeze. After a few breaths of time, he suddenly looked at Dmo Xian. His eyes were filled with anxiety and disbelief. How could she? How could she? The long hair on the head was also swaying because of the agitation. The densely packed skeletons in the surroundings continuously let out intense cracking sounds. You are lying to this god. She is the sovereign of God Emperors and has the ability to live forever. How could she have passed away? Dmo Xian's expression was still indifferent. No one knows what happened 10,000 years ago, but the sovereign of God Emperors has passed away. It is indeed a fact. The barbaric blood king's eyes froze bit by bit and finally fixed on an expression. His mood looked a little dejected, with an indescribable feeling. The entire space fell into silence once again. The barbaric blood king did not say a word for a long time. Yi Qing Luo was secretly thinking of a big wave of melodramatic plot. Suddenly, she was knocked by Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo felt the pain and raised her head to glare at the man. However, she was met with the man's dark and serious gaze. Don't let your imagination run wild. The Emperor of the Divine Emperor has nothing to do with the barbaric Bloodbone King. Yiqing Luo's grumbling words were swallowed by the man's seriousness. She puffed up her cheeks, not understanding why Dmo Xian had suddenly turned so serious. Could it be because of the Divine Emperor? It could be seen that Dmo Xian had deep feelings for the Emperor of God Emperors. Kind of like respect. It was kind of like reverence. His feelings were complicated and Yiqing Luo couldn't understand it. The two of them were whispering to each other. On the other side, the Bloodbone Barbarian King's chilly voice was bone-chilling. I don't believe it. I absolutely don't believe it. This deity will personally ascend to the divine realm and verify it. His voice sounded like he was on the verge of breaking down. He was on the verge of insanity. As soon as the roar ended, the skull which was embedded in the blood bones suddenly charged towards Yiqing Luo's direction. The densely packed bones crashed against Dmo Xian's defensive shield which encircled him. That kind of ruthless feeling was as though he was going to stake his life on the line. That skull stopped in front of Yiqing Luo at a close distance. When it was blocked by the transparent defensive shield, the entire face was twisted and sinister, its facial features were already deformed. Chapter 4166. The barbaric Bloodbone King roared as its bones collided more violently. That momentum was as though it had lost its rationality. That frenzied look made Yiqing Luo shocked. What's wrong with him? Yiqing Luo looked at Dmo Xian. Although the barbaric Bloodbone King was crazy. But Yiqing Luo wasn't worried that the barbaric Bloodbone King would break through Dmo Xian's protective shield. Dmo Xian's eyes glanced at her indifferently as his large palm stroked her hair comfortingly, anxious to verify the fact that the Emperor of God has passed away. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. Don't feel that. His persistence towards the Emperor of God is a little abnormal. Dmo Xian's hand on her head pressed her hard. Don't let your imagination run wild. No matter what feelings he has towards the Emperor of God, it has nothing to do with the Emperor of God. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and grabbed his large palm. Her long and narrow eyes stared at his eyes with a smile yet not a smile. What are you looking at? Dmo Xian looked down. Yiqing Luo grabbed his hand tightly as a suspicious expression appeared on her face. You seem to have a kind of complicated feelings towards the sovereign of God Emperor as compared to the barbaric Blood King. Speaking of this, she squinted her eyes again. When you and the barbaric Bloodbone King were talking, it sounded like you were like someone who knew the Emperor of God thousands of years ago. The slender fingers on the hand she held in her palms suddenly moved. Yiqing Luo looked at his hand and raised her brows. Don't tell me you are really an old monster who has lived for thousands of years. She thought that she had lived for 2 lifetimes and being together with Dmo Xian was already considered as a sibling love. But now it seemed Dmo Xian had lived for many times longer than her in both lifetimes. 10,000 years old monster. Yiqing Luo was shocked by this thought of hers. Her words, coupled with the messy expression on her face. Dmo Xian's face turned black. His large palm directly pressed on Yiqing Luo's head. What kind of messy things are you thinking about in this brain of yours? This is a very serious deduction. Yiqing Luo said seriously, I am seriously suspecting that you are thinking of gnawing on this little tender flower of mine. Dmo Xian's fingers suddenly changed direction. His slender, jade-like fingers held her chin. That peerless countenance suddenly came close to Yiqing Luo. In the blink of an eye, the man's face, which was completely defenseless against her, enlarged. The fragrance of sandalwood filled the air. Yiqing Luo's vision couldn't help but tremble. Her eyes stared unblinkingly at the man's approaching face. Then, his deep and magnetic voice floated into her ears, "Don't tell me. I'm a person who has lived for tens of thousands of years, and you're planning to abandon me." It was obviously the kind of pitiful and aggrieved words. But coming from the man's mouth, there was an inexplicable evil aura. It was very alluring. Yiqing Luo couldn't hold it in any longer, not abandoning, not abandoning. "Even if you're a 10,000-year-old monster, I still love you." Dmo Xian narrowed his eyes. Huh. A 10,000-year-old monster. That end was deep and magnetic. Yiqing Luo's little heart melted for a moment. Look at that face, that voice. Which part of him looked like a person who had lived for 10,000 years? Cough, I don't mean that. What I mean is, even if you're really a person from 10,000 years ago, I won't despise you. Yiqing Luo's survival instinct was very strong as she immediately changed her words. Dmo Xian's thin lips only twitched. Chapter 4167. Yiqing Luo. She probably couldn't coax him well. Who knew that men were also very concerned about their own age? The two of them acted as though there was no one else around, openly displaying their affection. It even agitated the barbaric Bloodbone King. The sinister eyes on that head were bloodshot red. It showed the barbaric Bloodbone King's raging emotions. "Lad, do you really think this god can't do anything to you?" The barbaric Bloodbone King's sinister voice was like a sharp blade. His voice had just ended. Like a spiderweb, the bloody bones that intersected with each other suddenly surged. It was no longer like before, using the blood bones to charge around. But, one by one, the blood bones quickly gathered around the both of them. Tightly, those drops of blood on the blood bones started to drip down drop by drop. The thick blood dripped onto the transparent protective shield that Dmo Xian had conjured. In an instant, the surrounding shape was revealed. The transparent protective shield was dripping with large amounts of blood. The most important thing was that blood was like lava. After it floated on the protective shield, it would make a sizzling sound as it melted. But after a moment, the surroundings of the both of them were covered by a patch of red. Their ears were filled with that kind of melting sound. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Her eyes were blood red. "Is he planning to melt your barrier directly?" Dmo Xian hugged her slender body tightly. "I'm not too sure about the effects of the barbaric Bloodbone King's blood bones. You follow closely." The word "I" had yet to leave her mouth. Suddenly, a piercingly cold wind struck. Yiqing Luo instantly felt a strong majestic pressure, pressing down from the top of her head. Her nose was filled with a thick smell of blood. And something dripped onto her body. The clothes that came into contact with it, with a sizzle sound, a big hole was melted. The protective shield was really melted by the blood. Yiqing Luo reacted swiftly, raised her hand to pull the sleeve which was dripping with blood, and tore it off. To prevent the blood, through the robe, from dripping onto her body. The protective shield was melted. "Be careful." Dmo Xian speedily hugged Yiqing Luo tightly and stuffed her little body into his embrace. Yiqing Luo could hear it clearly. It was the sound of Shui Gu's blood dissolving Dmo Xian's robe. This blood, it could even dissolve Dmo Xian's enchantment. Not to mention human flesh and blood. Dmo Xian blocked it for her. What about himself? "I'm fine, don't worry about me, think of a way to leave this place first." Yiqing Luo stuck her head out from his arms, her eyes filled with worry. He raised his head. She saw that the man's luxurious purple robe had already been melted by the blood, revealing a large area of his fair skin. Because he had been circling her tightly, she was unable to escape. The blood flowed along the melted robe and dripped onto his skin. In an instant, it melted and turned pitch black. Yiqing Luo could even feel the body of the man who was hugging her trembled slightly. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned red as she cried out urgently. His voice was choked with emotion. I can protect myself. I'm fine. The man's voice didn't have much fluctuation, his large palm pressed on her head and pushed her back into the room. Don't look. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips, her hands clutching his robe tightly. She wanted to struggle, but was afraid that her struggle would affect Dmo Xian. This silly man. Wouldn't she be worried if she didn't look? Chapter 4168. He didn't want her to get hurt. Did she want him to get hurt? Dmo Xian carried the person in his arms as he swiftly shifted his position. However, the barbarian blood-bone king had clearly anticipated this. Before the blood on the bones could dissolve everything, it had already used the blood on the bones to build solid walls of blood. It blocked Dmo Xian from all directions. Dmo Xian's sleeves fluttered. The majestic profound energy kept vibrating. But there were just too many bones around. Even if it smashed the large piece of bones in front of him. Soon after, a new wall of blood appeared. Especially after the blood bones were broken. The blood that splashed out from the broken bone also scattered in all directions like a goddess scattering flowers. In such a situation, there was no way to break out of this space. Yiqing Luo had been pressed in the man's arms. Her face was plastered on his chest and her head couldn't move. Beside her ear was the man's steady and calm heartbeat. And the sound of blood dripping onto Dmo Xian's body. Yiqing Luo's hand which was clutching his robe tightened. Ah Xian. When you get hurt, my heart will ache too. Her voice was choked with sobs. Under this situation, Dmo Xian had been protecting her and was being melted by the blood. As time went on, this kind of melting would melt the entire person. Just at this moment, Dmo Xian's hand suddenly pressed on her body. Following that, she heard a heavy breathing. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled violently. She quickly glanced sideways. She saw the man's purple robe which was like flowing clouds had been completely melted. On his arm, there was a scar. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and grabbed his arm. Before she could open her mouth, her body suddenly felt a cold and sticky touch. Her body was suddenly lifted up by a force out of thin air. Following that, her four limbs were confined and unable to move. That sticky, like a poisonous snake, eroded her entire body. All of this. It happened too quickly. The barbaric blood king apparently saw through the feelings between them. He was deliberately using such a method to force the two of them to be distracted. Little Luo, Dmo Xian's eyes turned cold as he totally didn't care about the burnt mess on his body, as his figure speedily approached Yiqing Luo's direction. A large amount of blood dripped down. Dmo Xian completely ignored it. His eyes were fixed on the young girl who was being restrained by the barbaric bloodbone king. Although Yiqing Luo's four limbs couldn't move, but her mind and consciousness were still clear. Looking at the man's desperate appearance, she struggled even harder. At this moment, her eyes were already dyed with a seductive red. On his wrist, the azure dew bracelet that resembled a cherry blossom totem was also faintly flickering with a faint flowing light. Ah Xian, between his lips and teeth, he spat out a silent name. The expression on her face was also changing bit by bit. As for the blood-bone barbaric king who had already lost his rationality, he totally did not notice the change in Yiqing Luo. Seeing that Yiqing Luo had been restrained, he manipulated the blood bone to block Dmo Xian's path. Immediately after, it rushed towards Yiqing Luo impatiently. This body of yours, this god wants it. As soon as he finished speaking, Yiqing Luo felt that her body seemed to be squeezed into something. A strong and majestic sense of oppression. It made her body produce an intense rejection. But that gush of energy was still surging into her body. It was like wanting to occupy her everything, to swallow her everything. What on earth was the barbaric Blood King trying to do? Her body. Chapter 4169. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted. Could it be? Bloodbone Barbaric King wanted to take over her body. Dream on. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned cold. Her entire body shook. An inexplicable aura poured out. She only felt. Her own consciousness kept resisting against the energy that wanted to squeeze in. That inexplicable aura quickly wrapped around that power. Following that, Yiqing Luo's mind went blank. Her consciousness was lost for a moment. A miserable shriek was heard. A blood-colored figure was sent flying. Yiqing Luo felt her 4 limbs were loosened. She lost all support and fell from midair. A hand clasped her waist. He pulled her into his embrace. Yiqing Luo opened her eyes tiredly as she leaned into the man's arms, panting slightly. What's going on? She totally didn't know what was going on. At that moment, her mind went blank and she lost consciousness. Then she regained consciousness. Her body was so weak that there was no energy at all. She couldn't even gather her profound energy. You actually. Not waiting for Yiqing Luo to reply, that cold sharp voice rang from the side. Yiqing Luo turned her head in Dmo Xian's arms. Seeing that disheveled skull embedded in the blood bones. But what shocked Yiqing Luo the most was, in all directions, the densely packed bones that were intertwining with each other began to break apart one by one. With a speed visible to the naked eye, they started to break. What was going on? Why did Bloodbone Barbaric King suddenly become like this? Why is she in your body? It's actually you, it's you. Bloodbone Barbaric King seemed to have seen something on Yiqing Luo as his eyes widened and his mouth kept screaming something. His shock and disbelief. Yiqing Luo totally couldn't understand. She wanted to ask. Above her head, the man's deep and indifferent voice floated down. She is not someone you can spy on. Bloodbone Barbaric King shook his head. Impossible. Impossible. This god won't believe it. You are all lying to this god. This god absolutely won't believe it. He muttered softly. His expression was one of madness. Amidst the murmurs and roars, Yiqing Luo felt a resistance pushing Dmo Xian. Another blink of an eye. The densely packed and broken bones in front of him had already disappeared. In front of them, it was already bright. This was the Linglong Palace. The barbaric Bloodbone King expelled them from his space. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she had many questions in her heart. However, he could not muster up any strength to sense the aura of the barbaric Bloodbone King. Her body was so exhausted that she didn't have the chance to think. Well, take a break, I will be by your side. The man's gentle voice, close to the ear. In a trance, his thin lips planted a kiss between her eyebrows. It was very light, very faint, but it had a reassuring warmth. In the next moment, Yiqing Luo couldn't resist the exhaustion in her body and fell into a deep sleep. He could vaguely hear someone talking beside his ear. Her power is about to awaken. It's about time. By the time Yiqing Luo opened her eyes again, she was already lying on the soft big bed. What greeted her eyes was a piece of white gauze. Her long curly lashes fluttered as she woke up a little. Chapter 4170. This was an extremely luxurious and elegant room. The air was filled with the faint scent of sandalwood. It can make people calm down. This familiar and reassuring scent should have been prepared by Dmo Xian. He looked around. There was no one else in the house. She slowly got up. His limbs were weak. His body seemed to have been hollowed out by something. He couldn't muster up any strength in his body. She furrowed her brows. He just woke up after a nap. Why does my body feel so tired? Could it be from before? The Linglong Palace Lord wanted to forcibly take over her body, and this was the repercussions. Didn't the Linglong Palace Master fail? Girl, you're finally awake. Old Man Song's figure slowly floated out from the azure dew bracelet. He floated to the side of Yi Qing Luo's bed, his eyes filled with worry. How is it? Do you feel any discomfort anywhere? Yi Qing Luo shook her head. I just can't muster up the strength. I'm fine, I'll be fine after a few days of rest. Old Man Song heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Qing Luo looked at Old Man Song's expression and frowned even tighter. What's wrong? I'm fine. Old Man Song chuckled. Your current situation can be considered normal. When the Bloodbone Barbarian King tried to forcefully invade your body, it was repelled by the profound jade heart within your body as well as the power of the divine tool. Your body and soul have been affected during this process, which is why you are feeling so uncomfortable now. He explained in a relaxed tone. But Yi Qing Luo somehow felt that Old Man Song's words seemed to be hiding something. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips but didn't probe further. She only nodded and asked, Where's Xian? Linglong Palace Lord is dead, and the disciples of Linglong Palace all thought that Linglong Palace Lord was killed by the Overlord. Old Man Song saw Yi Qing Luo changing the topic and immediately replied. Then, he sighed. After all, the Linglong Palace has a very good reputation in the land. Furthermore, it is the representative and symbol of the land. The death of the palace master of the Linglong Palace will affect the entire land. Yi Qing Luo lowered her head. She knew this very well. Everyone was ambitious. The Earth domain was divided into 3 main cities. Each main city wanted to unify the entire Earth domain and establish itself as the king. The existence of the Linglong Palace just happened to maintain the balance of the 3 main cities. Now that the Linglong Palace had collapsed, those ambitious people in the land domain would definitely become restless. It would not be easy to resolve the matter regarding the Linglong Palace. Even if Dmo Xian stepped forward, he might not be able to suppress those ambitious people. Right now, the Bloodbone Barbaric King has no intention of rebuilding the Linglong Palace. I reckon that he won't appear in the Earth domain for a while. Even if he does appear, he won't be interested in the Linglong Palace. Old Man Song saw the worry on Yi Qing Luo's face and comforted her. The Overlord naturally has his own considerations, you don't have to worry. Mentioning the Bloodbone Barbarian King, Yi Qing Luo recalled the frenzied look of the Bloodbone Barbarian King when he heard that the God Emperor had passed away. She seemed to have thought of something as she suddenly raised her head and looked at Old Man Song. How can you be so sure that the barbaric Bloodbone King has no interest in the Linglong Palace? Listening to Old Man Song's words, it seemed that Old Man Song also knew the Bloodbone Barbarian King. Old Man Song was startled. Only then did he realize that he had let it slip. Just as he was about to change the topic, he saw Yi Qing Luo staring at him intently. Chapter 4171. Yi Qing Luo nodded. Bloodbone Barbaric King built the Linglong Palace to seek revenge on the Divine Emperor. She paused and asked again. He wanted to make use of the Linglong Palace to gather some power in the Earth realm. Yes, just like the previous King of Darkness. Old Man Song had no intention to hide. Initially, everyone thought that the Bloodbone Barbaric King was annihilated by the Divine Emperor, but in actual fact, the Divine Emperor only dispersed the Bloodbone Barbaric King's soul and sent him to the Earth realm to sleep in eternal peace. Yi Qing Luo replied, Isn't the Bloodbone Barbaric King cursed in the God realm? The existence that everyone hated. Why did the divine emperor spare his life? And intentionally created the illusion that the blood-bone barbaric king had been annihilated. One must know that the blood-bone barbaric king used his body as nourishment, absorbing the flesh and blood of the god realm's people to maintain his life and increase his power. After doing these things, the divine emperor actually spared his life. She linked it to the blood-bone barbaric king's attitude towards the divine emperor. The melodramatic plot in Yiqing Luo's mind started to ripple once again. I don't know about this. Old man Tsang interrupted Yiqing Luo's wild imagination. He built the Linglong Palace in the Earth realm, probably to use the same method to find a suitable body to absorb the other party's soul and energy. Like the Linglong Palace's profound maiden, Linglong Palace's disciples, their imposing manner were all nourishment for the blood-bone barbaric king. Especially the Linglong Palace's lord. Not only to find a suitable body and power for the blood-bone barbaric king, and to find someone with a better body than himself, to become the blood-bone barbaric king's nourishment. Wasn't his soul dispersed by the divine emperor and he slept in eternal peace? Why is he still awake? Yiqing Luo asked. Old man Tsang's expression was grave. The Linglong Palace was a force that suddenly rose hundreds of years ago and quickly took root in the Earth realm, becoming the symbol of the Earth realm. In other words, the blood-bone barbaric king had awakened hundreds of years ago. As for why, this point needed to be verified. I feel this matter will not end so soon. Yiqing Luo's eyelids drooped down slightly as she thought of the blood-bone barbaric king's looks. She had an ominous premonition. Don't let your imagination run wild. Old man Tsang retracted his solemn expression and revealed a smile. After knowing that the divine emperor has passed away, all of the barbaric blood-bone king's perseverance will disappear. He has lost the goal that he has been persisting in all this time. He will not be able to walk out of his dejection, so he will not come out to stir up trouble again. Yiqing Luo did not reply. Would it not appear again? But, before they were pushed out of that space by the blood-bone barbarian king. The way the barbaric blood-bone king looked at her was obviously not right. Once you've settled the matter of the Linglong Palace Hall, you will have to go to the heaven realm. Even if he appears again, he won't be able to go to the heaven realm to find you. Old man Tsang comforted her. Although he has already awakened, he still can't leave the Earth realm. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath. That's true, anyway. We're going to the heaven realm soon. She suppressed the restlessness in her heart. About half an hour later, Dmo Xian's figure appeared in the room. Dressed in a purple robe, he moved like flowing clouds as he walked. When Yiqing Luo's gaze fell onto the man's face, her eyes were filled with a smile. Ah, Xian. She stretched out her hands towards him. Chapter 4172. Yiqing Luo's arms circled around his neck. Her body was still weak and feeble. You're back. The young lady was a little flustered and her tone was also soft. Dmo Xian bent down and kissed her forehead. Miss me. He carried the young lady and picked up her clothes from the side and helped her put it on. The young lady was too lazy to even lift her hand. Under the man's service, she was dressed neatly. The man took her into his arms again and walked slowly to the outer hall. The air was filled with the rich aroma of food, whetting one's appetite. After waking up from a deep sleep, Yiqing Luo only felt weak all over, but she didn't feel hungry or thirsty. But at this moment, the table was filled with delicious and fragrant dishes. Yiqing Luo's stomach immediately grumbled in response to the scene. She nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, her eyes were curved as she smiled. You feed me. On her matters. This man had always been very meticulous. Dmo Xian carried her to the dining table and sat down. The young lady's body was still soft, with a soft and boneless feeling. Looking at her posture, Dmo Xian's eyes only flickered slightly. Very quickly, he bent over and carried her in his arms again, then sat down and let the young lady lie in his arms. He took the food by the side and slowly fed it into Yiqing Luo's mouth. Yiqing Luo's expression was very lazy, as she opened her mouth slowly and continued to eat her food. Not knowing if it was an illusion. Yiqing Luo felt a little weak when she was chewing the food. She didn't have the energy to ask Dmo Xian how to deal with the Linglong Palace's matters. While eating, rough footsteps were suddenly heard outside the door. Then, he saw a figure rushing in hastily. "Imperial Madam, I heard you're awake." Old Lai strode in and saw Yiqing Luo, who was like a queen, nestled in the male pet's arms, receiving service. His eyes widened. "Imperial Madam, why do you look so sickly? Is this still the arrogant and mischievous Imperial Madam in my memory?" Yiqing Luo. Was this considered as a compliment? Yiqing Luo swallowed the food in her mouth and rolled her eyes at him. "What are you doing here?" "I heard that the monarch's wife has woken up. Of course, I have to come and have a look," Lao Lai said matter-of-factly. Then, he lowered his voice mysteriously. "But, Madam, you'd better not let others see you like this." "What's wrong with me? She just woke up and didn't have any strength. Was there a need to exaggerate? You haven't seen the bronze mirror, have you?" Old Lai clicked his tongue and said, "The death of the Linglong Palace Lord has caused quite a ruckus. If others see your sickly appearance, they might take the opportunity to attack you." As he spoke, he stroked his white beard. "Some people will do anything to achieve their goals. It looks like you won't be able to be naughty in the near future. Why do you sound so disappointed?" If she couldn't be mischievous, he wouldn't be able to do anything, right? Illusion, it's definitely an illusion. Lao Lai changed the topic as if he was trying to cover something up. "How on earth did you torture yourself like this? If it wasn't for the fact that you were captured by the Linglong Palace Lord and carried back by the Overlord, I would have thought that you had been living a shameless life with the Overlord for a few days." Old Lai. An icy cold and hoarse voice spat out 2 words. His voice was obviously very soft. Chapter 4173. His back straightened up. His face was frivolous, teasing and joking expression had turned serious. "Cough, I suddenly remembered that I still have something on." Old Lai turned his head and left. "Stop." Yiqing Luo suddenly spoke out. Old Lai's feet stopped abruptly. When he felt 2 different gazes land on him, his body froze. "What do you mean by that?" Yiqing Luo straightened her back from Dmo Xian's arms. Although her body was weak, her brows were filled with a weak expression. But when he asked this question, his expression changed. Unknowingly, the overflowing aura was still able to shock people. At least, Old Lai was shocked. "Don't listen to his nonsense, be good, eat something and fill your stomach first." Dmo Xian held Yiqing Luo's waist and pressed her back into his arms. Yiqing Luo's pink lips pursed slightly as her expression turned solemn. She raised her hand and blocked Dmo Xian's arm. Her hands were weak. But when she blocked Dmo Xian's arm, Dmo Xian held back his strength to avoid hurting her. "Old Lai, bring the bronze mirror over," Yiqing Luo said. Old Lai's body stiffened as he looked at Dmo Xian for help. Dmo Xian didn't give a response. He didn't dare to move. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as there was an obvious chill in her eyes. Old Lai. Old Lai almost wanted to cry but had no tears. Why was he so cheap that he couldn't wait to rush over after knowing that Yiqing Luo had woken up? On one side was the Overlord, who obviously didn't want Madame D to know his current state. On the other side was Madame D, who could make the Overlord obedient. So, who did he listen to? No matter who he listened to, it was all wrong. In the end, Old Lai still put on a bitter face as he stared at the Overlord's frozen gaze. Step by step, he moved over to get the bronze mirror. Compared to the Overlord, Madame D was more terrifying. At least Madame D could control the Overlord. But the Overlord was obedient to Madame D. No matter how he looked at it, following Madame D's words was the right choice. Old Lai raised the bronze mirror in front of Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's expression was solemn as her gaze fell onto the bronze mirror. On seeing that blurry face in the bronze mirror, Yiqing Luo was completely stunned. In the bronze mirror, the girl's face was pale and lifeless, as if she had lost all of her vitality. It was as if she was terminally ill. It was as if he would die in the next instant. No matter how she blinked her charming eyes, there wasn't much life in his eyes. What was going on? Yiqing Luo's hands touched her own face. Ever since she woke up, Old Man Song had never mentioned her condition. When Dmo Xian saw her, his expression remained the same. Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly congealed as she raised her head and looked into Dmo Xian's eyes. You know what's going on with me, right? I'm fine. Dmo Xian held her little hands tightly, using his own warmth to infect her slightly icy cold hands. Rest for a few days and you'll be fine very soon. Did something happen when the Bloodbone Barbaric King forcibly took over my body? Yiqing Luo thought of herself. When her body was forcibly taken over, she had a moment of blankness. Although it was only for that moment. When she regained her senses, the Bloodbone Barbaric King had left her body. Whereas she felt weak and powerless. It seemed like it started from that moment. Chapter 4174. Dmo Xian turned silent. Yiqing Luo held his hand tightly. Ah Xian. Cough. There are still many things in Linglong Palace that I need to settle. I'll make a move first. Old Lai saw that the situation was not right and hurriedly moved towards the main door. As he moved, he stared at the two of them who were looking at each other silently. Seeing that the two of them ignored him, Old Lai swiftly turned around and ran away. The door closed. The lights in the room dimmed. In the quiet room, only the sound of their breathing could be heard. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she stared at the man's eyes without blinking. Ah Xian, tell me, what's wrong with my body? Dmo Xian's obsidian-like eyes were overflowing with peach blossoms, like a pool of spring water. His expression was very grave. The two of them looked at each other for a long time. His slender and beautiful hand slowly held the young lady's little hand. Slender as jade fingers, the joints were exquisite, suffused with a faint glow of beautiful jade. Yiqing Luo's gaze shifted to his fingers, as she was dazzled momentarily. Broad and thick, holding the tender little hand. Slowly placed it by the side of his lips, falling a kiss. The man's thin lips were boiling hot, imprinting Yiqing Luo's hand, as it became scorching hot. Lil Luo, don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you. His magnetic voice was slightly hoarse, with some unconcealable helplessness. Yiqing Luo's body slightly stiffened. Long curly eyelashes blinked a few times. Suddenly, as though she realized something, her eyes looked at Dmo Xian in a daze. She looked at that handsome face, which was filled with heartache and worry. Her heart thumped hard. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand from Dmo Xian's hand. Her hands clenched tightly as she closed her eyes slightly, circulating the profound jade heart in her body. But it was completely empty. There was nothing there. The emptiness in her body was like a floating boat, wandering aimlessly on the vast sea. Once those tyrannical powers, when released, could collapse Mount Tai, destroy the four seas. Nothing. Nothing at all. Her entire body was so weak that she couldn't even do normal actions. Now, even her own powers had completely disappeared. Yiqing Luo's heart instantly sank. His pale face turned even paler. Little Luo, Dmo Xian's warm embrace embraced the young lady tightly, suppressing the young lady's attempt to circulate her profound energy. This is only temporary. It won't affect your body, you'll be fine after a few days. How many days? Yiqing Luo felt that her lips were very dry and the words that came out of her mouth were somewhat astringent. Very soon. Dmo Xian hugged her tightly. I won't let anything happen to you. He did not give an exact time. This meant that Dmo Xian had not thought of a way to recover her. Yiqing Luo buried her head in the man's arms. She deeply inhaled the man's sandalwood scent. However, his heart could not calm down at all. She would become like this. It must be the after effects of the blood-bone barbarian king forcefully occupying her body. Little Luo, the man's worried voice came from above. He put his hands on her shoulders, trying to pull her away from his embrace and look at her. Yiqing Luo rubbed her head against his chest, as her arms wrapped tightly around his waist, unwilling to raise her head. This is only temporary, believe me. Dmo Xian didn't force her, as he hugged her tightly again, as his chin rested on the top of her head. Chapter 4175. N. Yiqing Luo replied in a muffled voice in his arms, I believe you. Don't be unhappy. Dmo Xian lowered his eyes and caressed the young lady. It's not that I'm unhappy. Yiqing Luo rubbed her face in his arms for a while before she slowly raised her head. Her chin rested against his chest. She raised her head slightly. What she saw was his smooth chin. She opened her mouth and bit on the man's chin. Bright red lips, long and narrow eyes curved, the corners of her eyes bloomed with rippling poppy. It made the young lady's beautiful face even more flirtatious and charming. I just can't accept my useless self. It seemed that this bite had vented out all the depression in the young lady's heart. She released her lips and looked at the man's chin. His teeth had already formed a neat sound. Her eyes were filled with a satisfied smile. Dmo Xian allowed the young lady to do whatever she wanted on him. When he saw the young lady's face revealed a smile. His thin lips also raised into a smile as his voice was low and gentle, I'm here. And I have you. Yiqing Luo's arms hooked around his neck as she propped herself up and looked him in the eyes. You always blame me for not wanting to rely on you. Now I'm going to rely on you. Dmo Xian's thin lips suddenly pressed down and planted a heavy kiss on the young lady's lips. A low and hoarse voice overflowed from his lips, I'm extremely honored. Yiqing Luo hugged the man tightly as her chin rested on the man's shoulder. Under the big smile, it covered the young lady's brows, that piece of melancholy that couldn't be dispelled. The next few days, Yiqing Luo had been cooped up in the room. No matter who it was, she closed the door and refused to see them. Dmo Xian had been accompanying her. If there was anything that needed to be settled, he would let Tang Beiyuan and Langley Xian guard the door to prevent any accidents from happening. After Yiqing Luo lost her profound energy, she lost the infusion of energy. Even the connection between the profound Phoenix Ring and the profound Dragon Ring was cut off. No matter how troublesome the Linglong Palace's matter was, Dmo Xian didn't dare to be too far away. Basically, if there was any special movement on Yiqing Luo's side, he would rush over immediately. Yiqing Luo, who was cooped up in the room, smiled helplessly after she knew this. No choice. Who asked her to be so frivolous? He had made quite a few enemies. On top of that, there was also the elusive Dark Palace eyeing them from the dark. If news of her current state were to spread, it was definitely going to be a mess. Yiqing Luo leaned against the headboard. There wasn't the slightest smile on her face when she was facing Dmo Xian. After learning that he had lost his power and became a cripple, he was shocked. Even if he knew, it was only temporary. It was impossible for him not to feel sad. She just didn't want Dmo Xian to worry about her. He didn't want everyone to worry about him. She didn't want to show off that she cared a lot about losing her power. The matter of the Linglong Palace was very complicated. After all, it could be considered the faith of the land. It was enough to make Dmo Xian badly battered. She did not want to be a burden to Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo. Come out. Suddenly, an angry roar filled with resentment came from the door. Then came the footsteps of someone trying to force their way over. But she was blocked by Langley Xian's raised hand. Without Lord Dizun's orders, no one is allowed to disturb Lady Matriarch. Chapter 4176. Please return. Langley Xian's expression did not change. He had the appearance of an old cadre. If I don't see her today, I will absolutely not leave. That person gnashed her teeth in anger. This saintess must demand an explanation for the Linglong Palace master. Wu Fu, if you don't stop, don't blame me for taking action. Tang Beiyuan said impatiently. A woman who has to rely on the overlord to resolve everything. Only you people would treat her as the mistress of the imperial palace. Wu Fu, laughed coldly. Come. Do you really think this saintess is afraid of you? As she spoke, Wu Fu, her Xian energy burst forth from her body and she got into an attacking stance. Tang Beiyuan's expression was cold. She raised her hand and was about to attack. Suddenly, a young girl's clear and serene voice rang out from the room. Beiyuan, let her in. Qing Luo. Tang Beiyuan's hands paused as her expression changed drastically. For the past few days, she had been guarding outside the door. Naturally he knew about Yiqing Luo's current condition. If Yiqing Luo saw Wu Fuer, and Wu Fuer suddenly attacked Yiqing Luo, what should she do? The risk was too great. It doesn't matter. Doesn't she want an explanation? I'll have a good talk with her. Yiqing Luo's tone was indifferent. Ha! A glint flashed across Wu Fuer's eyes. She retracted her attacking stance and raised her head arrogantly. Did you hear that? It's your master who wants to see me. Don't block the way. Tang Beiyuan's face was livid and she refused to budge. Wu Fuer straightened her back and strode towards the door. When he approached Tang Beiyuan, he even puffed out his chest and bumped into her. Tang Beiyuan's eyes burned with anger. She clenched her fist and was about to punch. Beside her, Langley Xian held her hand and shook his head slightly at her. Wu Fuer swaggered into the room with her head held high. Only then did Langley Xian let go of Tang Beiyuan and said in a low voice, "Go find Dizun." Tang Beiyuan pursed her lips and stared at the closed door for a moment. She gritted her teeth and said, "Pay attention to what's going on inside. I'll go look for His Majesty right away." Inside the house, Wu Fuer stepped into the room. That arrogance of hers had mysteriously dissipated. She did not know why, but her heart inexplicably began to beat uneasily. His originally arrogant face also became nervous, and his heart trembled. It was as if the air was filled with a kind of pressurizing aura. It made her a little breathless. Wu Fuer didn't want to admit it. But he had to admit it. This was emanating from his bones, the fear towards Yiqing Luo. Following the sound, she slowly walked into the inner hall. The room was decorated very elegantly. The scent of sandalwood in the air was soothing, but it made her heart tighten even more. It was as if he was looking at His Majesty right in front of him. The light in the room was dim and hazy. Her gaze slowly fell on the bed, the young girl who was leaning against the headboard. The luxurious and exquisite undergarments wrapped around the girl's beautiful figure. She just leaned against the wall. The lines of her figure were soft and smooth. The girl's black hair cascaded down like a waterfall, silky and thick. Between her brows was a lazy and cold gaze. Her half-squinted charming eyes were suffused with a faint cold glint. That pink lip slightly curled up into a smile. Although it looked delicate and charming, it inexplicably made one's scalp go numb and a chill run down their spine. Just a glance. Chapter 4177. Why? Don't you want to see me? The young lady's voice was filled with indifference and laziness. Wu Fu shuddered, as though she just realized her motive for coming here. Her eyes were fixed on the person on the bed. Her gaze was burning, as though she wanted to confirm something. But after staring at the young lady for some time, her brows were knitted into a knot. Yanfree City's mysterious lady, didn't you make a big fuss outside earlier? Now you're speechless when you see me. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with ridicule. Wu Fu's face flushed red as her eyes widened. Who's speechless? She would never admit it. She was stunned by Yiqing Luo's imposing manner. The prideful woman raised her chin arrogantly and said, "You instigated the overlord to kill our temple master. You're alone, hiding in the room like a turtle. What kind of ability is that?" Yiqing Luo's eyebrows rose, her long and narrow eyes were like a cat looking at her lazily. "Oh? Maya Xian killed the Linglong Palace master? Do you have any evidence?" "You." Wu Fu bit her lower lip. "Do I still need any evidence? You were taken away by the hall master and the overlord went to save you, so he killed the hall master. You saw it with your own eyes." Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards with a "are you an idiot" expression. "You didn't see it with your own eyes and have no evidence. On what basis do you say that Xian killed the Linglong Palace master? Other than the overlord, who else can kill the hall master?" Wu Fu thought that Yiqing Luo was quibbling. Yiqing Luo tilted her head, her index finger lightly tapped on her lips, and said evilly, "She committed suicide." "Nonsense." Wu Fu retorted without hesitation, "If you want to find an excuse, you should find a better one. How could the hall master possibly commit suicide?" "Oh, then, it was the palace master of the secluded palace who killed her." Yiqing Luo smiled. "That's even more impossible." Wu Fu exploded, "Brother Gong would never kill the hall master because of you. You're such a fickle woman. You've already seduced His Majesty, and now you're trying to seduce Brother Gong. TSK. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. At the mention of her beloved brother, his battle prowess soared up. Why didn't he have this kind of fighting strength when he was denouncing Lord Hallmaster? A few seconds of silence for the palace master of the Linglong Palace. The girl's face still had that kind of carefree and lazy expression. It was as if he had no reaction to her anger at all. This made Wu Fu feel very frustrated. "Are you done?" Yiqing Luo asked with a smile. Wu Fu bit her lip and clenched her fists tightly as she looked at the unaffected young girl. She forced herself to calm down. Her motive for coming here wasn't to question Yiqing Luo and the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness's relationship. She couldn't let Yiqing Luo say a few words to make her flustered. "Yiqing Luo. No matter how you quibble, Hall Master died because of you, that is the truth. I'm going to kill you and take revenge for the Hall Master." Wu Fu's eyes turned cold as her palms suddenly moved and her profound energy exploded, striking towards Yiqing Luo's face. This palm strike was like a hot knife through butter. It brought along an extremely strong force. Langley Xian, who was outside the door, sensed this energy fluctuation. He instantly broke through the door and rushed into the room. Mistress! But it was too late. Chapter 4178. Wu Fu, don't you dare. After informing Dmo Xian about this matter, Tang Beiyuan rushed back and happened to see this scene. Her eyes turned red. Using the fastest speed in his life, he dashed forward. Yi Qing Luo had not only temporarily lost her profound energy, her own strength. She couldn't even exert her strength. Facing Wu Fu's attack, Yi Qing Luo couldn't avoid it at all. But at this moment, with a bang, a figure flew out of the room and landed heavily on the ground. The ground cracked, revealing a huge deep pit. Gravel flew everywhere, smoke curled up. Faintly, a figure could be seen lying in the deep pit. At the same time, there were numerous people outside the courtyard. Before the crowd could get a clear look, they saw a purple figure rushing over. That figure was tall and imposing. His purple robe rippled in all directions like flowing clouds under the powerful qi. That man's long arm reached out. The young lady lying lazily on the bed was pulled into the man's arms. Wait a minute. On the bed? Then the one who was sent flying was not Qing Luo. Tang Beiyuan stared blankly at the man's arms, that languid, elegant cat-like young lady, her eyes filled with tears of excitement. Luckily Qing Luo was fine. A large palm, from behind her, rested on her shoulder. The thick palm brought a reassuring feeling. Tang Beiyuan glanced sideways and met with Lang Li Xian's calm eyes. He gently pulled her into his arms and said in a low voice, "Madam will not let anything happen to you." Tang Beiyuan pursed her lips tightly. Her gaze shifted little by little to the direction of the deep pit in the ground. The smoke dispersed. The person lying in the deep pit. Wasn't that Wu Fu? Tang Beiyuan was stunned. What was going on? Could it be that Qing Luo had regained her strength? But looking at Qing Luo in the arms of the Overlord, it didn't look like she had regained her strength. If she hadn't regained her strength, how did she do it when Wu Fu attacked her? Not only was she safe and sound, but she even repelled Wu Fu. Cough. Cough. The person in question, Wu Fu, was also very confused. She felt as if her entire body had been broken. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels were also shattered. When he coughed, he would even cough out large mouthfuls of blood. She was in so much pain that her whole body was curled up. Yama Mystic Maiden. When the Linglong Palace's disciples saw this, they immediately rushed forward and wanted to help him up. But before he could get close, a formless air wave came toward him. Profound waves rippled in the air. All the Linglong Palace disciples who were near Wu Fu were pushed away. The Linglong Palace's disciples trembled and looked towards the source of the qi wave in horror. His eyes met with a pair of cold, black eyes. It was just a slight match. He felt as if he was in an ice house. They shivered and immediately lowered their heads, not daring to move an inch. It was the Overlord. Di Zun was stopping them from getting close to the Empyrean City ferry. Now, the entire Linglong Palace was almost under the control of Di Zun. Di Zun stopped them from approaching Wu Fu Air. How could they dare to disobey? Everyone could see that this was Wu Fu's own doing. Offending Di Zun was equivalent to offending Di Zun. No one cared about Wu Fu, who was lying on the ground, twitching. Tears and blood mixed together. Chapter 4179. Are you hurt anywhere? Dmo Xian didn't even look at Wu Fu, but lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms as he asked gently. He asked while asking. His gaze swept over Yiqing Luo from top to bottom. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she leaned her head on his shoulder. No matter, I know what I'm doing. Looks like I have to tie you to my side at all times. Dmo Xian's tone was slightly displeased. The moment I'm not by your side, you start to create trouble. Yiqing Luo cried out in injustice. I'm very obedient. Extremely obedient. Dmo Xian lowered his head and bit her nose lightly, indicating that he didn't believe her words. Yiqing Luo snorted. The too sweet atmosphere made the surrounding people not dare to disturb them. Just at this moment. Suddenly, he heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching from afar. Following that, they saw a lady dressed in a green lotus robe rushing over. Her vision fell onto Wu Fu, who was deeply embedded in the pit. When she saw Wu Fu's current state, tears streamed down her face. Wasn't that person Wu Fu's grandmother, Hall Master Wu Yan? Perhaps Dmo Xian's heart was on Yiqing Luo. Or perhaps Dmo Xian didn't intend to stop the two of them from interacting. Hall Master Wu Yan easily rushed to Wu Fu's side and speedily fed the pill into Wu Fu's mouth. At the same time, he injected profound qi into Wu Fu's grandma. Wu Fu was in so much pain that her body was twitching, but her consciousness was extremely clear. When she saw Hall Master Wu Yan, her stomach was filled with grievances as it surged up. Don't talk. Hall Master Wu Yan's voice was trembling as he held his granddaughter's icy cold hand tightly. When the pill entered her stomach, the pain in Wu Fu's body was finally alleviated. But that face was still terrifyingly pale. Hall Master Wu Yan's heart ached as he trembled as he caressed Wu Fu's icy cold face, tears flowing down uncontrollably. Grandma. Fu is in so much pain. Wu Fu lay in Hall Master Wu Yan's arms and cried. Hall Master Wu Yan hugged her, his heart aching for her. Grandma will help you. She hugged Wu Fu and stared hatefully at Yiqing Luo's direction. Imperial Madam. Fu is just young and impetuous. Even if she did something wrong, you shouldn't have been so ruthless. After killing our palace master, do you still want to kill the only mysterious fairy of our palace of Linglong? Hall Master Wu Yan's words had indirectly reminded the disciples of the Linglong Palace Hall. This Yiqing Luo was also responsible for the murder of the other two mystical maiden. Now, the palace master of the Linglong Palace had also killed the palace master of the Linglong Palace because of her. Yiqing Luo could be said to be the enemy of Linglong Palace. Every single word and sentence was to provoke the Linglong Palace's disciples' hatred towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo, who had long seen through everything, raised her brows without any change in expression as she looked at Hall Head Wu Yan, her eyes filled with ridicule. Hall Head Wu Yan, have you forgotten, I seem to be younger than that precious granddaughter of yours. Young and impetuous. When she said this, could she use some brains? Using Hall Head Wu Yan's words, being younger can only be considered as being young and impetuous. Even if she did something wrong, she shouldn't be punished, right? Chapter 4180. You. Hall Head Wu Yan's face was twisted into a ball, as she had not expected Yiqing Luo to use the loophole in her words to counterattack. If you can't do it yourself, what right do you have to ask me? Yiqing Luo sneered. Moreover, I've already said this many times, your hall master and those few profound nymphs' deaths have nothing to do with me. If you've ascertained that it's me, please bring out the evidence. After a slight pause, Yiqing Luo's smile turned into a sneer. It's just a matter of opening your mouth. Can I also say that you were dissatisfied with the palace master of the Linglong Palace and wanted me to become the next palace master's successor. So you tried to usurp the throne and killed the palace master of the Linglong Palace. What nonsense are you talking about? Hall leader Wu Yan's face turned ashen as he retorted. Yiqing Luo shrugged her shoulders. Everyone knows about Sima Zhao's intentions. Do you really think that no one can see through your ambition? Hall Master Wu Yan's body suddenly froze and he retorted with a panicked expression, I have worked hard for the Linglong Palace for decades and have wholeheartedly assisted the palace master. I would never dare to be disloyal. You outsider, why are you slandering me? What are your intentions? Yiqing Luo smiled without saying a word. That smile seemed to be mocking Hall Master Wu Yan's sophistry. No one would believe him. Hall Chief Wu Yan's expression was extremely ugly. As a disloyal person, she had been exposed in front of him. He felt the most guilty. He totally didn't notice that unknowingly, he had been led into a rhythm by Yiqing Luo, totally forgetting to denounce his own granddaughter. His heart was filled with the desire to defend himself. Becoming the Linglong Palace Master through the proper channels, or becoming the Linglong Palace Master through schemes. The meaning between the two was completely different. Grandmother. Wu Fu'er cried pitifully in Wu Yan's arms. She swallowed the pill that Hall leader Wu Yan had fed her. The intense pain of having his body and mind shattered had already subsided. But this didn't mean that she would let Yiqing Luo off easily. She must seek justice for her grandmother. Yiqing Luo dared to make a move on her, the only mysterious fairy in Linglong Hall. He had to pay the price for this. However, to Wu Fu'er's disappointment, even if Hall leader Wu Yan wanted to feel heartache for her grievances, he could not even take care of himself. Because, the moment Wu Fu'er opened her mouth, she felt wronged. The man's indifferent and cold gaze had already landed on Hall leader Wu Yan. His red lips curled up frivolously. His smile was cold. Even the light in his eyes was cold. In an instant, Hall leader Wu Yan felt a chill run down his spine. His throat seemed to be blocked by something, and he could not speak. This senior has already said that this senior will deal with the matter regarding the Linglong Palace Master. The man's deep and magnetic voice was extremely dignified as it reverberated in the air. The moment he opened his mouth, almost in an instant, the entire place quietened down. Hall Master Wu Yan. Suddenly, DMO Xian called out Hall Master Wu Yan. These 4 words caused Hall Chief Wu Yan's body to tense up even more. The man's cold words fell into her ears. Do you still remember what I said on the first day I arrived at the Linglong Palace? Hall Master Wu Yan abruptly raised his head as he looked at DMO Xian with a pale face. She subconsciously hugged her granddaughter tightly in her arms, and her lips trembled a little. DMO Xian's lips curled coldly, as the sneer in his eyes deepened. If you've forgotten, this senior doesn't mind helping you recall. Following these words, the surrounding air seemed to have condensed into frost. Chapter 4181. Hall had Wu Yan's throat tightened. He could hear the threat in DMO Xian's words and didn't dare to pretend that he didn't understand DMO Xian's words. He immediately lowered his eyes and pursed his lips. The overlord said that no one is allowed to disturb Madame D during this period. DMO Xian's smile turned colder. There was no emotion in his frozen eyes. He spat out 2 words. Ah Xian. Langley Xian understood and patted the girl's head in his arms. He walked towards Hall head Wu Yan expressionlessly. Hall head Wu Yan's face tightened. He immediately carried Wu Fu'er and wanted to retreat. But Langley Xian just stretched out his hand. He lifted Wu Fu'er by the collar and lifted her up from Hall head Wu Yan's arms. Hall head Wu Yan was anxious to save his granddaughter. But before he could get close, he was stopped by Tang Beiyuan. Hall Master Wu Yan, the Empyrean fairy of Yan City, came to find the emperor's wife on her own despite knowing that it was the emperor's order. She even tried to kill the emperor's wife. Is the Empyrean fairy of Yan City looking down on the imperial palace, or is she acting on your orders? Tang Beiyuan deliberately dragged out her words and raised her tone. It seemed to be a taunt and a threat. Hall Master Wu Yan shook his head in panic. Fu doesn't have any ill intentions. She just wants to ask the imperial madam what happened when the hall master died. She just wants to investigate the truth behind the hall master's death. This explanation was too far-fetched. Hall head Wu Yan felt guilty when he said it himself. Tang Beiyuan raised her hand and stopped Hall head Wu Yan's explanation. Yan Wu City's mysterious maiden barged into Madame D's resting room and attacked her. This is the truth. Hall head Wu Yan need not say any more. The more you say, I can't help but suspect if Yan Wu City's mysterious maiden's actions are really related to you. These few words caused Hall Chief Wu Yan to stop trying to snatch Wu Fu-er back. Wu Fu-er was so scared that her face turned pale. Tears welled up in her eyes. Grandma, Grandma. But no matter how she called out aggrievedly, Hall head Wu Yan could only bear the pain and turn his head away. In this situation, if she was really implicated, neither of them could escape. Hall Chief Wu Yan listened to the aggrieved cries that made her heart ache. She clenched her fists tightly and suppressed the surging impulse in her heart. Under Dmo Xian's suggestion, Langley Xian brought Wu Fu-er away. Without the sound of her crying, the surroundings were extremely quiet. The onlookers did not dare to break the silence. Dmo Xian carried Yiqing Luo in his arms as he turned around and strode into the room. The door suddenly closed, blocking the view of the outside world. Tang Beiyuan looked at the trembling crowd before her and smirked. Today's lesson is to tell you not to disturb Lady D. Even if you offend His Majesty, you shouldn't offend Lady D. Do you understand? Inside the house, Dmo Xian carried her back to the inner hall. The girl kept her eyes closed as she rested. Only when her body leaned against the soft bed did she lazily open her eyes. Has it been solved? Very tired. Dmo Xian didn't answer her question but sat by the bedside and kissed her sleepy brows. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes and her voice was lazy. Still all right, just a little tired. Nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, her consciousness started to blur as she was half asleep. Chapter 4182. If you know that you're tired, you still want to see that woman. Dmo Xian's tone was somewhat displeased as he lowered his head and bit her lips. Yiqing Luo was in pain and her body struggled a little as she stared at him resentfully. I'm already so uncomfortable and you're still not going to comfort me. Her tone was filled with the coquettish manner of a young girl. Dmo Xian's feigned anger could no longer be maintained as he helplessly hugged her delicate body tightly. Why should I comfort you? He asked for it. His mouth was full of complaints. But his movements were gentle and affectionate. Yiqing Luo leaned into the man's arms, her charming eyes squinted, her posture was as lazy as a cat. If I don't see her, I'm afraid the consequences will be even more troublesome. This is the best solution I can think of. What if anything happens? Dmo Xian pinched her nose. I'll be worried about you, understand? Yiqing Luo nudged her head against his chest. I know, so. I'm very serious about protecting myself. She raised her head and rested her chin on Dmo Xian's chest, looking up at his peerless countenance. Ah Xian, tell me. Who is the person who sent Wu Fu-er to my courtyard to create trouble? Dmo Xian knew that this little woman was trying to change the topic. He cooperated and didn't continue to harass the girl. He answered the girl's question. Don't you already have the answer in your heart? Yiqing Luo tilted her little head and blinked her charming eyes. There are too many guesses and there's no way to confirm and verify. Yes. Right from the start, Yiqing Luo had purposely chosen to meet Wu Fu'er. This was because Wu Fu'er had insisted on meeting her at this critical juncture, and had even made a big fuss about it. Wasn't it so that he could see her with his own eyes? And the reason to see her? He just wanted to confirm her current condition. After all, if the person behind the scenes was really related to the Dark Nether Palace, the matters between her and the Hall Master of the Linglong Palace and the barbaric Bloodbone King, as well as the fact that she might have lost her profound energy. It was not surprising that the Palace of Darkness would know about it. Therefore, Wu Fu'er was sent to test and confirm whether she had really lost her powers. Because ever since the news of the Linglong Palace Lord's death spread out, Yiqing Luo then faded out of everyone's line of sight. Even if it was mentioned. The answer he gave was that the Imperial Madam was not feeling well and was currently recuperating. These were all similar excuses. This made the other party suspicious. Had Yiqing Luo really suffered some sort of injury in the confrontation with the barbaric Bloodbone King, causing any repercussions, etc.? Because of this, Wu Fu'er appeared. Of course, this was only her guess. The person behind this might not be someone from the Dark Palace. The reason why Yiqing Luo would allow Wu Fu'er to enter the room if she was not careful, was to make use of Wu Fu'er to eliminate the other party's guesses. Wu Fu'er had always been afraid of her. Trembling with fear, he braced himself and entered the room, shouting all sorts of things. But on seeing that Yiqing Luo was safe and sound, and her relaxed attitude, which part of her looked like someone who had lost her profound energy, or someone who was not feeling well. This is a sense. This made Wu Fu'er's fear towards Yiqing Luo even more. Because of this, when he faced Yiqing Luo, he was filled with fear and uneasiness. Chapter 4183. The room door was opened by someone again. It was Old Lai, Patriarch Qiao and the rest. Tang Beiyuan was following behind. Old Lai was the first to bear the brunt as his eyes were filled with joy. Madam D, have you regained your strength? Earlier, they were among those who rushed over with Dmo Xian. When the news of Linglong Palace Lord's death had spread throughout the Earth realm, and when the death of Linglong Palace Lord was related to the Overlord, almost all the influential figures in the Earth realm had rushed over to Linglong Palace Lord. These few days, everyone looked calm on the surface, but in actual fact, they were all testing each other. Patriarch Qiao, Old Lai, and the rest also knew that Yiqing Luo had temporarily lost her strength. So they went to find trouble with Wu Fu'er. One by one, they rushed over. Coincidentally, they saw the scene of Wu Fu'er being sent flying onto the ground. No. Yiqing Luo looked at their joyous gazes as she shook her head slowly. No. Old Lai looked at her in astonishment. No. Then how did you do it earlier, to send Yen Free City's mysterious maiden flying with one palm? The joy on the faces of the others also gradually faded. Yiqing Luo's weak body, plus the situation of losing her profound energy. After a long time, it was easy to arouse suspicions from all sides. And very easy to get into trouble. Yiqing Luo smiled, but it was a smokescreen for Wu Fu'er's fear of me. No matter who the person behind Wu Fu'er was, the matter that the other party wanted to investigate would be completely dispelled because of Yiqing Luo's actions today. After all, if Yiqing Luo's body was really affected by the barbaric Bloodbone King, then she wouldn't be able to meet Wu Fu'er so boldly, and send Wu Fu'er, flying with one palm. I can tell that Lil Luo is well prepared. Dmo Xian placed the young lady on the bed and pulled the blanket over to cover her up. He then sat by the bed and held her hand as his gaze fell onto a certain spot. When he spoke, the corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking manner. Yiqing Luo followed his gaze and looked over. A transparent white figure who was hiding in the corner was faintly discernible in the air. She was discovered just like that. This man was too perceptive. Yiqing Luo held on to Dmo Xian's hand, not letting his line of sight to intimidate that figure in the dark. Their attention was not diverted by Dmo Xian. They were all placed on Yiqing Luo, their faces filled with astonishment. What camouflage! He's that powerful. This wasn't just because she knew that Wu Fu was afraid of her. Even they couldn't tell that it was a smokescreen. Yiqing Luo smiled, and when she lowered her eyes, her slender fingers gently caressed the cherry blossom totem on her wrist. His smile was a little unfathomable. On the other side, Old Man Tsang, who had received the warning from Di Guang, expressed his bitterness. He should have directly flown back into the Azure Dew bracelet. Why was he so nosy that he had to hide in his room in his spiritual body form to watch the show? As a matter of fact, Di Zun found out. Furthermore, he looked at Di Zun's eyes. He seemed to be very unhappy about the cooperation he had given Luo Yu. Was she blaming him for not stopping Luo Bingyao from fooling around? Instead, he was fooling around with her. Could he be blamed for this? What could he do? He was in despair, all right. Did he look like someone who could reject Luo Yu? Did Luo Yu look like someone who would give up after being rejected? If it was the Overlord himself, could he reject Luo Yu? Chapter 4184. Yes. The so-called camouflage. But she had secretly borrowed the strength of Old Man Tsang. After losing her profound energy, the divine weapon she carried could not be activated without the infusion of profound energy. Even the Azure Dew bracelet could not be activated. Only Old Man Tsang and the Azure Dew bracelet could move freely. Therefore, Yiqing Luo made use of Wu Fu Air's fear of her. When Wu Fu Air launched an attack, Old Man Yu Tsang appeared and sent him flying. Old Man Tsang was just a spiritual existence. Basically, he could not attract anyone's attention. Especially Wu Fuer, who was terrified. Not to mention, she could not identify where the power to counter her came from. But, she did not expect Dmo Xian to see that it was Old Man Tsang who was secretly helping her. Old Lai asked a few more questions. Yiqing Luo had just dealt with Wu Fu Air and her body was already exhausted. In a daze, he heard Dmo Xian chasing the few of them out. Shortly after, the man climbed onto the bed. His strong arms pulled her body into his embrace. Lying on the man's broad chest, her nose was filled with the man's elegant sandalwood scent. It was a soothing scent. Made her fall into a deep sleep. Inside the dark palace, the surroundings were filled with black qi and yin qi. Several figures in black cloaks stood respectfully on both sides of the hall. And in the middle was a tall figure half kneeling on the ground. That person was also covered from head to toe in a black robe and his face could not be seen clearly. In front of them, it was a black curtain. The curtain fluttered lightly, like black smoke rippling. It rippled with an invisible and treacherous chill. The few of them couldn't help but shiver under the cold. Finally willing to come back. Behind the black curtain, came a cool, cold voice without any warmth. That voice made one's scalp tingle. The black-robed man who was half kneeling on the ground knelt even lower, his forehead touching his head, his voice trembled. Master, you still know that I am your master. The cold voice sneered, the tone was filled with a dangerous aura. The person kneeling on the ground trembled and said with a trembling voice, "This disciple doesn't dare." As soon as the black-robed man finished speaking, the air seemed to be filled with a cold glint. All of a sudden, a sharp force rushed down. The black-robed man didn't even have time to scream before he was sent flying by the force. He smashed into the wall and vomited blood. The black-robed man's body landed heavily on the ground again. The black-robed man did not stop at all. He forced his swaying body to kneel on the ground again. A large mouthful of blood gushed out from his mouth. His mouth was still saying, "Your disciple doesn't dare. Your disciple doesn't dare, why wouldn't you dare?" The cold voice sounded like an Azura from hell. "I know I was wrong." The black-robed man curled up and begged for mercy in a low voice. The gloomy voice sneered a few times. Suddenly, she heard that cold and gloomy voice with a hint of malice. "You like her?" The back of the black-robed man stiffened. He quickly raised his head and said, "Master, your disciple didn't. The cold voice sneered, his tone was full of ridicule. "You disobeyed my orders and secretly sent her a message. That's called didn't." The eyes under the black robe revealed a horrified expression. Chapter 4185. Ha! When that cold voice chuckled, the entire person, even the pores, exuded a chill, not going to quibble anymore. Master is so resourceful, no matter how this disciple quibbles, I can't hide it from Master. The black-robed person's voice trembled, this disciple is willing to accept the punishment. There's no need to accept the punishment. The cold voice sounded cold, after all. All your actions have become the key to help this seed achieve my goal. The black-robed person's body trembled, her face turned pale. In his heart, thinking of himself these few times. Whether it was meeting her privately, or wanting to take her away. It would turn the situation, turn the matter, into a series of things which were pushed by him. It was no wonder, she was unwilling to believe him. In his heart, no matter how much indignation. He also didn't dare to express any opinion. He also didn't dare to follow Master's words, act obedient to seek favor. This seat's good disciple. The cold voice sighed faintly, want to get her. The black-robed person's fingers suddenly curled up, Master. He was vigilant in his heart. He wanted to plead for her. Once Master had his eyes on her, she would not be able to escape. But the words begging for mercy were at the tip of his tongue, but when he met that pair of treacherous cold eyes behind the black curtain, he stiffly dared not to open his mouth. The cold voice laughed in a low voice, this seat's good disciple, don't forget. That red clear pavilion's pavilion lord also admires her. An overlord, a red clear pavilion's pavilion lord. Do you think, just based on you, can get the beauty back? Suddenly, his tone abruptly increased, just answer, do you want, or not? The black-robed person's heart instantly jumped, yes. He almost blurted out. There was no room for regret. You are this seat's most beloved disciple, whatever you want, this seat will naturally get it for you. That cold and gloomy voice cackled. Obviously, the words sounded like concern for the black-robed person. However, his tone was enough to make one tremble with fear. Linglong Palace. Yiqing Luo slowly opened her eyes in the midst of sleepiness. The man was no longer by her side. She lazily stretched out a hand. The position beside him was also ice-cold. Come to think of it, the man must have accompanied her until she fell into a deep sleep, then left. Yiqing Luo stretched herself. His whole body was still limp, and he couldn't muster up any strength. In the past few days, he even needed someone to serve him 3 meals a day. She was already used to it. His heart would no longer be like before, constantly wondering when he would be able to regain his former strength. She was anxious. The people around her were actually more anxious than she was. These few days, Yiqing Luo had also understood a little from Old Man Song. Her body had become like this. It was probably when the barbaric Bloodbone King was forcefully occupying her body. The force that had forcefully entered her body had blocked a certain place in her profound heart jade. That was why he temporarily lost his strength. He was unable to circulate his profound heart jade. After all, it was related to the cultivation of one's profound strength, as well as the circulation of one's profound jade heart. Before I can find the blockage. However, he did not dare to act rashly. All he could do was find out where the blockage was. Then, he would unblock the blockage. Only then could he recover his strength. Now that things had come to this, Yiqing Luo could only wait patiently. This kind of matter couldn't be rushed. Roar roar, suddenly, something furry rubbed against her feet. Immediately following that, a white furry little head popped out from the blanket. Chapter 4186. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand. Chi-Chi's head was placed in her palm. Roar roar, Chi-Chi whimpered softly, as though it was acting coquettishly. Yiqing Luo carried the little one in her arms as her slender fingers caressed its little head. How is it? Did you discover anything? Chi-Chi squinted its tiger eyes with a comfortable and joyful expression. As its soft voice sounded like a child, Chi-Chi listened to Master's arrangements and went over to Wu Fu-er's side. It raised its neck and spread its limbs wide, revealing its white belly. Just as Master had guessed, Hall leader Wu Yan bribed the female disciple on guard and secretly went to the dungeon to see Wu Fu-er. Yiqing Luo caressed Chi-Chi's soft belly as her eyes narrowed. She specially asked Chi-Chi to keep an eye on Wu Fu-er secretly. It was to find out who was the person behind Wu Fu-er. Everything was as she had guessed. Hall Master Wu Yan should have led Wu Fu-er to seek refuge with other forces, against the Imperial Palace and against her. For now, Yiqing Luo's mind was only filled with the 3 words, secluded palace. After all, if it was other forces, even if they had any opinions about her, in front of Dmo Xian, they wouldn't dare to be so unbridled. Did you hear what they said? Yiqing Luo asked. Chi-Chi flipped over again. Hall Master Wu Yan said. Secluded Palace will definitely save Wu Fu-er and leave Linglong Palace. He also said that they have already sent news and can take action immediately. It was indeed the Secluded Palace. It was really a force that refused to leave. Why was it always on her? And this action, what action was it referring to? Secluded Palace. They had failed several times. And their losses were considered heavy. Now they were going to take action again. What new tricks did they come up with this time? Or what trump card did they have for sure? Yiqing Luo subconsciously thought of herself. The one who had lost her profound energy. Could it be that the collaboration with Old Man Song to deal with Wu Fu-er had not fooled the other party? Yiqing Luo decided to inform Dmo Xian about this matter first. Yiqing Luo felt that with Dmo Xian by her side, anything could be easily solved. During this period of time when he lost his power, she would just rely on her man. She tapped Chi-Chi's head lightly. Go and see what Xian is doing. If he's free, ask him to come over. Chi-Chi rubbed against her palm for a long time before she jumped down from the bed with her tail raised and jumped out of the window. Chi-Chi's shadow disappeared from the room. A clear and majestic voice came from outside the door. Madam D. Yiqing Luo propped herself up as her gaze swept towards the room door, responding softly, Patriarch Qiao, is anything the matter? Patriarch Qiao paused at the door. The Overlord asked me to invite you to the front hall. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Ah Xian. What did she want me to do in the front room? It seems that because of the mysterious Lady of Yama's matter, Hall Master Wu Yan incited many female disciples of the Linglong Palace in an attempt to avenge the Linglong Palace master. Patriarch Qiao's tone was a little helpless. Those female disciples have been incited to the point that they have lost their minds. They don't care about the overlord's existence at all. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her expression changed slightly. How does Xian intend to handle this? Chapter 4187. This time, it was noisy. It was probably not just Hall leader Wu Yan's instigation. Not to mention, the various superpowers that were eyeing them covetously from behind. Everyone wanted to share the burden of the Linglong Palace. After all, an existence like the Di Zun would never stay in the land for too long. Hence, it was impossible for him to be interested in the Linglong Palace. Thus, the Linglong Palace would eventually fall into the hands of the various major powers of the Earth realm. During this period of time, if it wasn't for DMO Xian's suppression, the Earth domain had probably already forgotten about the incident where they were nearly wiped out by the Gloomy Palace during the auction of the Earth domain. Now, was he finally unable to restrain himself? The Overlord only asked me to invite Madame D over. As for the specific solution, I guess we'll have to wait for Madame D to arrive and discuss it with her. Patriarch Qiao said. Did he need to invite her, to discuss it? Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly as her gaze was fixed on the door as she called out, "Then will family Patriarch Qiao please wait for me outside for a moment, I'll pack up and come out." Yes. Patriarch Qiao's expression didn't change much. Hearing this reply, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly darkened. His movement of getting up also gradually slowed down. She leaned against the soft pillow, her fingers subconsciously caressing the profound phoenix ring. However, now that he had lost his dark force, he couldn't activate the connection between the Netherworld Phoenix ring and the Netherworld Dragon ring. She pursed her lips and looked at the door again. Old Man Song. She concentrated and shouted in her heart. Old Man Song's voice sounded in his mind, "What's wrong?" "Something has happened." Her expression was grave. "Have you sensed Beiyuan and Langley Xian's auras?" Generally speaking, if DMO Xian was not in the courtyard, he would definitely leave Tang Beiyuan and Langley Xian in the courtyard. However, ever since Patriarch Qiao appeared, he had not heard of the two men. Old Man Song's spiritual body immediately floated out and circled around the room. No. As soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have sensed something, and his expression immediately changed. Not good. I can sense two very weak auras outside the courtyard. They seem to be the auras of those two guards. Weak? Beiyuan and Langley Xian had already been restrained. This was bad. Girl, outside the door. Old Man Song sensed the person outside through the door. Go and find Venerable Sovereign. Chi has already gone. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed. We can only temporarily hold up the people outside the door. Wait for Xian to rush over first. He could only hope. When Chi rushed over to look for Xian, he was not busy. Otherwise, Chi would obediently wait for Dimo Xian to finish his work before passing on the message. "Madam, are you not ready yet?" Outside the door, Patriarch Qiao's voice suddenly sounded again. There was a different emotion in his tone. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly as she took a look at Old Man Song and whispered, "I'll have to trouble Patriarch Qiao to wait a little longer. I don't know where Xian has thrown my outer robe." Outside the door, there were several breaths of silence. Then, the door was pushed open. "Madam D, let me help you look for him. There's a difference between men and women. After all, Lord Qiao is my friend Xiao Yinyan's father. It's not right for him to enter my room alone." Yiqing Luo hurriedly stopped him. However, Patriarch Qiao's footsteps did not stop there. After pushing the door open, he directly walked in. At the same time, Old Man Song's figure speedily returned into the azure dew bracelet. Chapter 4188. When he saw that there was no movement on the bed, that pair of dark eyes flashed with a complicated light. Is this what Die Fuhren meant by looking for the outer robe? The young girl curled up on the bed. Her slender and soft body leaned against the soft pillow. It accentuated the girl's soft and beautiful figure. Her hair cascaded down like a waterfall. The bedding covered the girl's waist. When the young girl raised her eyes to meet his gaze, that pair of eyes that were like the most flawless jade in the world crashed into his heart like colored glass. It didn't look like he was looking for a robe. It could almost be said that from the moment she said she wanted to pack up and follow him to see Dmo Xian, she just stayed on the bed, not moving at all. Obviously, right from the start, she had no intention of following him to meet Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo exchanged glances with the other party for several breaths and couldn't help but frown. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but when the other party's gaze landed on her, she felt as if she was dreaming. There was an obvious change in the expression in the other party's eyes. She hid the deep thoughts in her eyes and leaned lazily against the headboard. She deliberately relaxed her voice and said lazily, "I'm really sorry to have made Master Chow come all the way here for nothing. I might have caught a cold when I was sleeping just now, and now I'm in a coma. I'm afraid I can't go with you to see Ah Xian." As she spoke, she raised her hand and rubbed her forehead. "Where are you feeling unwell?" the man blurted out almost instinctively. The urgency and concern in his tone made Yiqing Luo raise her brows. As if sensing that his emotions were not right, the man coughed softly and straightened his attitude. He pretended to be calm and said, "I'm sure His Majesty will be very worried if he knows that Madame D isn't feeling well. So, may I trouble Patriarch Chow to inform Ah Xian about this?" Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she put on an unwell and weak look. It made the other party's gaze fixated on her even more intensely. Just as Yiqing Luo was about to ask them to leave, that person suddenly walked over with large strides. With a few steps, he was already standing beside the bed. Yiqing Luo looked up. She looked into the pair of dark and repressed eyes. Patriarch Xiao would never look at her with such a gaze. "When did you find out?" He lowered his head and quietly looked at her. His eyes were dark and he had no intention of hiding it. Yiqing Luo played dumb. "What? When did you see that I'm not the Chow family head?" The man didn't beat around the bush with her. The expression on Yiqing Luo's face slowly converged. It seemed that he did not intend to continue pretending. Yes, the person before him had the exact same face and voice as Chow clan's patriarch. However, he was not the real Patriarch Chow. How did he recognize me? It should be, from the very beginning. Because Dmo Xian knew her current condition, so how could he possibly let family head Chow invite her to the front hall for a discussion? Even if there was a need for discussion. Even then, he would take the initiative to come to her room. Then, she purposely probed. She had to tidy herself up again before meeting Dmo Xian. If it was the real Chow family head, he was naturally aware of her current situation. He knew that right now, she didn't even have the strength to tidy herself up. How could she possibly get off the bed alone and walk out of the room to meet Dmo Xian? So, from that moment onwards, she was certain. The person outside the door was not family head Chow. She originally thought that she could drag on for a period of time until Dmo Xian rushed over. Chapter 4189. He directly admitted that he was impersonating Patriarch Chow. This honesty made her not know how to drag the time. "From what I know, you don't know much about Patriarch Chow. How did you tell?" He opened his mouth to ask again, his eyes burning as he stared at her face without blinking. This kind of gaze. Yiqing Luo vaguely felt that it looked familiar. It seemed as though she had seen this kind of gaze somewhere before. Yi Qing Luo, can I assume that? No matter what disguise I put on in front of you, you will still be able to recognize me. He suddenly leaned downwards, getting closer to Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted as her slender brows creased. You are Palace Lord of Secluded Palace. It's him. That person who impersonated Dmo Xian. The Palace Lord of Secluded Palace. It's actually him again. Running over to impersonate Patriarch Qiao again. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and directly pressed against his chest, which was getting nearer. You like to impersonate others so much. Hee hee. The person who was recognized didn't panic at all, instead he laughed lowly. His laughter carried a tinge of satisfaction. As expected, you recognized me. It really was him. Yi Qing Luo's expression congealed, unable to understand what the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace's strange laughter represented. What do you want to do? Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes to look at him. He was still smiling as he looked at Yi Qing Luo's face. His gaze was deep and filled with possessiveness. Follow me. Yi Qing Luo's body stiffened slightly as she was on high alert. The expression on her face maintained a languid elegance. To where? To where you should go. He replied in a deep voice. His voice was no longer that deep and dignified Patriarch Qiao's voice, but belonged to him, a slightly hoarse voice. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes twitched acutely. His words were no longer, I'll bring you away, but, to where you should go. This change made Yi Qing Luo's expression change slightly. It's that person who asked you to come over. He gave a gentle smile as he slowly bent down, placing both hands on her shoulders. Yi Qing Luo, I won't let you escape again, follow me. As he said that, his hand had already embraced her petite body. Originally it was just a light touch. But as soon as he touched it, he suddenly realized that the person in his arms had no intention of struggling at all. She was very obedient. He couldn't help but lower his head to take a few more glances. He tried to pick her up. Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace. Yi Qing Luo suddenly cried out as she raised her hand and pressed against his arm. The force was very light. He paused and did not continue. The girl's eyes were calm. She looked up at him from such a close distance. Ah, Xian is not far away. Are you sure you can take me away safely? He shook his head. His gaze was deep and gentle. You're willing to leave with me. The meaning is different. That gaze made Yi Qing Luo extremely disgusted. To be honest, until now, she couldn't believe it. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace said that he liked her. He leaned over slightly and leaned towards Yi Qing Luo's ear. His voice was clear and soothing, very pleasant to listen to. But the words that came out of his mouth made Yi Qing Luo's face turn pale bit by bit. He said, that bunch of brothers of yours who came all the way from Nirvana Realm, whether or not have the right to meet you again, will depend on your performance. Seeing Yi Qing Luo's entire body stiffening, her face pale and her eyes looking at him in astonishment. Chapter 4190. Yi Qing Luo's eyes sunk. What do you mean? The smile at the corner of the man's mouth gradually widened. It means exactly what it says. Yi Qing Luo suddenly raised her hand and tugged the man's collar. What did you do to them? However, the hand that was about to reach out fell powerlessly to the ground. She was agitated and angry. Her body was getting weaker and weaker. The man's eyes drooped as he looked at the hand on the side of the bed, and the young lady's gloomy, pale and powerless face. What's the matter with you? He could tell that something was wrong with Yi Qing Luo. Wearing Patriarch Qiao's face, revealing that kind of worried and obviously adoring gaze towards her. This indeed made Yi Qing Luo feel disgusted. Adding on to the fact that she was worried about her own bunch of brothers. How could Yi Qing Luo possibly answer the man's question? She pursed her lips tightly as she turned her head to avoid the man's outstretched hand, repeating word by word, "What on earth did you do to them? What on earth do you want?" The man's hand landed on empty air. He wasn't annoyed, nor did he have the intention to force her. He slowly retracted his hand and gazed deeply at her face as his voice became gentle. "I can guarantee that their choice is absolutely safe. But their life and death is in your hands. How can I believe you?" Yi Qing Luo suppressed the fear and uneasiness in her heart as she forced herself to calm down as she asked. There were still a few days before the 3-month appointment with her brothers. They shouldn't be able to reach the Earth realm from Nirvana realm so quickly. After all, it was a place that spanned across 2 realms. This must be. He intentionally lied to her, trying to lure her into his trap. "I won't lie to you," the man replied softly as his thin lips pressed against her ear. "Moreover, you don't have the right to doubt, isn't it?" Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers suddenly clenched tightly as the expression on her face turned gloomy. Yes. She had no doubts, no right to choose. Even if she told herself over and over again in her heart. Her brothers didn't come to the Earth realm. But, what if? She couldn't afford to gamble on this. She couldn't admit the consequences of this what if. "I don't have much time. You also know that I don't have any power in the Palace of Darkness." He was very frank. With the face of Qiao family's master, he smiled gently and affectionately. "If you follow me obediently, I can guarantee the safety of your brothers." Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered slightly as she raised her head slightly. Her cold eyes met with the man's without blinking. Then, he slowly said, word by word, "I will go with you." The corners of the man's mouth raised into a big smile. He said in a tone as if he was teasing a pet, "That's a good girl." He raised his hand and gently rubbed the girl's head. When his palm came into contact with Dao Qi's body, Dao Qi's eyes widened. Yi Qing Luo only felt a chill down her spine. She held back and looked at him. "Aren't we leaving? Why aren't you leaving?" The man chuckled softly and slowly straightened his body. He let go of her touch. "One day, you will accept my touch." Yi Qing Luo. She would never be able to accept it for the rest of her life. The man stood up straight and turned around. "Let's go." Yi Qing Luo gripped the bedding tightly. Her weak body made her unable to get down from the bed. But she didn't want the man to touch her. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips as she used her consciousness to summon Xian Gui. Chapter 4191. He sensed an unusual movement. The man who was walking in front turned his head back alertly. When he saw that jade-colored object. A huge tortoise, a sturdy and flickering tortoise shell. And its body was coiled with something that looked like a snake or dragon, sticking out its scarlet tongue. That pair of tiny eyes even exuded a cold and sinister aura. This Palace Lord immediately took a step back as he stared at Black Tortoise vigilantly. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and touched Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as her figure moved slightly and sat on top of the tortoise shell. After she sat properly, her face was even paler than before. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Her breathing was also slightly panting, as though she was out of stamina. Palace Lord walked towards her as his brows creased tightly as he asked in a probing manner, "Is your body unwell?" Yi Qing Luo's performance made one suspect if something had happened to her. That look was totally different from the flamboyant one she had seen previously. Even when they used her brothers to threaten her, she didn't show much of a reaction. Thinking of this, Palace Lord's eyes were filled with concern as he half squatted down and was about to check Yi Qing Luo's pulse. Yi Qing Luo only patted Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as she expressionlessly avoided Palace Lord's hand. Xian Gui, let's go. After that, she slowly raised her head as she shot a glance at Palace Lord indifferently. What has it got to do with you if I'm not feeling well? Will you let me continue to rest in bed because of this? Palace Lord's throat tightened as he met Yi Qing Luo's ridiculing gaze, unable to say a single word of rebuttal. He indeed wouldn't let Yi Qing Luo continue to rest. If Yi Qing Luo replied in this way, that would be tacitly admitting the fact that she was really not feeling well. If Yi Qing Luo in this state followed him back to Palace Lord's, would there really be no other effects? His mind was in a whirl. The young lady had already been carried out of the room by Black Tortoise. He quickly chased up and blocked in front of the young lady. The young lady raised her head as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Palace Lord's emotions were fluctuating as he looked at the young lady's ridiculing gaze as his throat tightened. He was clearly worried that it would be unsafe and uncomfortable for the girl to sit on the Black Tortoise. But when his arm reached the girl's shoulder, the words that were on the tip of his tongue became, "Black Tortoise is too big of a target, will be discovered. I'll carry you." Yi Qing Luo's eyes were calm. She raised her hand and blocked his outstretched hand. Her emotions were very indifferent. Xian Gui can keep up with you. He had already lost count of how many times he had been rejected by the young lady. But every time, his heart would feel a sharp pain as if it was being torn apart. Something seemed to be hammering on his chest. Under the young girl's indifferent gaze, his stiff hand slowly retracted. He pursed his lips and did not speak again. He turned around and vanished into thin air. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as her slender fingers tightened. Xian Gui, keep up. No matter what, she had to make this trip. He summoned Xian Gui first. If anything urgent happened, Xian Gui's turtle shell would be able to handle it for some time. There was also Old Man Song. At the very least, he could buy some time. Even if Chi didn't manage to find Dmo Xian in time. Tang Beiyuan and Langley Xian hadn't appeared for a long time, which would attract Dmo Xian's attention. She only needed to wait for Dmo Xian to rush over, then there wouldn't be much of a problem. But sometimes, no matter how perfect and precise her calculations were, but when things happened. Chapter 4192. The boundary between Earth Realm and Heaven Realm. A slender figure stood on the peak of the mountain, facing the wind. A black dress, under the strong wind, blew like a thick black fog, encircling that person's body. And behind that person, stood two respectful ladies dressed in lotus green attire. "Miss Bai, do you think Yi Qing Luo will really come?" One of the ladies with a vicious expression carefully probed. This was obviously a trap. Yi Qing Luo was such an intelligent person, would she really come? In front, the slender figure's red lips rose slightly, that young and beautiful, but extremely distorted face, surfaced a vicious expression. Yes, she will definitely come. The two ladies in lotus green attire exchanged glances. The other amiable-looking lady smiled. If Miss Bai says she will come, then Yi Qing Luo will definitely come. Let's just wait patiently. That scoundrel has always been putting on airs, in order to let others say that she values relationships and righteousness. How could she not come? The slender figure's voice was very pleasant, but the tone was so cold that it made one's scalp go numb. Isn't she relying on the Overlord? This time round, let's see how she is going to escape from Miss Bai's palm. The vicious-looking lady sneered. The slender figure who was addressed as Miss Bai's smile turned even colder, as her gaze slowly fell onto the 10 over people who were hung on the cliff, covered with injuries. Those people. Weren't they the World Mercenary Group's people? Sensing the slender figure's gaze, the young man who was hung upside down, His blue eyes were filled with an icy cold glint, shooting straight towards her. "What are you staring at?" The vicious-looking lady raised her profound energy, as she struck a palm strike towards that person. The young man's throat felt a fishy sweetness, as blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The other amiable-looking lady stopped her. "Don't kill them, these are all tools to restrain Yi Qing Luo." Her words paused for a moment, as she continued, "Letting them die now, how can it be as delightful as torturing them bit by bit in front of Yi Qing Luo?" Obviously, the lady was smiling. But the words that came out from her mouth made one tremble in fear. The three women looked at each other and burst into laughter at the same time. The laughter was sharp and piercing. The dozen or so people hanging at the edge of the cliff all looked angry, but they couldn't struggle at all. "Captain, what should we do?" the wounded youths whispered. Blue-eyed youngster Long Yunzhan's expression was icy cold as his eyes were filled with flames. "We must believe in Qing Luo. Yes, we must believe in all Luo. We will all be safe." The young girl beside him had a cold expression, but her words were filled with warmth and intimidating power. No matter how low their repeated voices were, they were still clearly heard by the slender figure at the edge of the mountain peak. The woman's eyes immediately became even more ruthless. He swung his arm. A long, soft whip appeared in her hand. She raised her whip and flung it towards the 10 over people hanging on the edge of the cliff. "Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo. Did you treat Yi Qing Luo as a god? Ha, do you think she can save you just because she's here? Stop dreaming." The whip was raised, as it streaked across the air, giving out a swish-swish sound. A wisp of black profound energy encircled the whip. This whip landed. Chapter 4193. The 10 over people's faces instantly turned pale. When Long Yunzhan saw that soft whip descending, his body suddenly moved. Making use of the rope which was hanging him, he swung his body horizontally in front of those 10 over people. He attempted to use his own body to block the descending whip. His action made the young men and ladies' expressions changed as they cried out in shock, "Group leader!" Just as the soft whip was descending, suddenly, a hurricane swept across. The air was filled with strong profound energy. Following that, they saw that soft whip which was about to land on Long Yunzhan's body was flung away by the strong energy. Immediately following that, they heard a lady's shocked cry and miserable shriek. The 10 over people looked over in shock. They saw that black-robed slender lady who was standing at the side of the high peak was directly flung out, as she fell heavily onto the ground. There was no trace of the high and mighty look which she had earlier. The 10 over people's gazes suddenly lit up. Their gazes swiftly moved around the surroundings. Qing Luo was here. Qing Luo was here. The same thought appeared in everyone's mind. To them, the only person who would appear in time to save them was only Yi Qing Luo alone. Not only them were thinking this way. The lady who was flung out by the strong wind at the high peak also had the same thought. Under the support of 2 ladies dressed in lotus green robes, the slender figure stood up from the ground in a disheveled state. Her gaze was like a torch as she stared at the direction where the energy had come from. But a low and deep voice, extremely calm and dignified, "When did this palace lord allow you to take action against them?" The gloomy and cold dignified voice instantly covered the entire air. Everything in the surroundings became cold and condensed. The slender figure suddenly froze as a glint of hatred flashed past her eyes. But very quickly, it was covered up by the charming expression on her face. The 2 ladies dressed in lotus green robes who were supporting her, on seeing the person, became extremely respectful as they bowed in fear and trepidation. "Palace Lord." The profound waves rippled. A tall and slender figure slowly walked out. He was still wearing that face of Patriarch Qiao. But his entire temperament was emitting a sinister and powerful aura, totally different from Patriarch Jiao. "There's no need to get angry, Palace Master." The slender figure spoke in a coquettish voice. Her young and beautiful face was filled with a flattering smile. Her smile and frown were both charming and enchanting. If it was an ordinary person, this smile could really make people fall head over heels for him. However, when the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace glanced at her, his gaze didn't change at all. The slender figure seemed to be used to this and continued to smile. "They are just a few insignificant tools. What's the harm in killing them?" The eyes of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace turned cold and his sleeves fluttered. The thick black yin chi wrapped around the slender figure and threw her to the ground again. The slender figure was thrown into confusion. It was accompanied by a cold and dignified voice. "Bai Mei, are you questioning me?" The slender figure, which was Bai Mei, fell to the ground in a sorry state. She curled up and trembled slightly. After hearing the threatening words of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace, he couldn't help but shrink back and soften his voice. "No, I don't dare, Palace Master." When the other two ladies saw this, they tacitly welcomed the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace while looking behind her. "Didn't Palace Master bring Yi Qing Luo here?" Chapter 4194. Could it be that? Did the Palace Master fail? He wasn't able to bring Yi Qing Luo over. Even if he captured Yi Qing Luo's former brother, to use him as a tool, he wasn't able to make Yi Qing Luo take the bait. Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder are looking for my mother. Suddenly, an extremely lazy voice sounded leisurely. Immediately following that, a blazing figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. The young lady was sitting on the back of a jade-green giant tortoise. Two snake-like and dragon-like things were resting on the young lady's legs. Just as the young lady opened her mouth, those two intertwined things suddenly raised their heads. Jade-green eyes, scarlet snake head, it made one shudder. The young lady was leaning lazily on the tortoise shell. Her jet-black hair was not tied up, looking slightly messy. However, this only served to further accentuate her pale face, which was devastatingly beautiful. Yi Qing Luo. Those two ladies dressed in lotus-green robes stared blankly at Yi Qing Luo, as they almost blurted out Yi Qing Luo's name. Their hearts were out of control as they started to jump nervously. This was fear emitted from their bones. Fear towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled slightly, her expression was lazy as her gaze swept past the both of them. She knew that Hall Head Wu Yan had joined the Nether Palace. But she had not expected that Third Elder had also joined the Nether Palace. All for the sake of fighting for the position of Linglong Palace Lord. If they knew the real use of the Linglong Palace Lord, would they put in so much effort just to become the Linglong Palace Lord? She scoffed lightly, with some ridicule. When the slender figure saw Yi Qing Luo, her eyes sparkled with excitement. Amidst the excitement, it was mixed with resentment and hatred. New hatred and old hatred made her completely forget about the existence of the Palace Lord of the Nether Palace. Yi Qing Luo. You're indeed here. Before she could say the word here, what came towards her was a thick austere aura. A gust of cold wind brushed past her. The young lady who was sitting on Black Tortoise's back had already passed her, charging forward. Even her peripheral vision had not landed on her. Yi Qing Luo's expression was solemn, as Black Tortoise neared the edge of the peak. He saw a dozen people hanging at the edge of the cliff, their bodies riddled with scars. Her half-narrowed eyes were covered in a deep red flowing light, and she was like a bloodthirsty Azura, cold and murderous. The young woman's aura suddenly burst forth. She got up and wanted to get off the Black Tortoise's back. Yi Qing Luo. The Palace Lord's figure flashed, and in a blink of an eye, he stood right in front of Yi Qing Luo. He stretched out his hand and stopped Yi Qing Luo's body. Let go. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were icy cold, the red light flashed and her murderous aura was extremely strong. I've said this before, if you listen to me obediently, nothing will happen to them. The palace lord of Abyss Palace had not retracted his hand which was placed in front of Yi Qing Luo. He could tell that there was something wrong with Yi Qing Luo's current condition and body. Perhaps it was out of selfishness. He wanted to hide the fact that there was something wrong with the girl's body. So when he rushed over, he saw Bai Mei raising her whip, striking those companions whom Yi Qing Luo cared about. He snatched the chance to stop Yi Qing Luo. Because, he was very clear. If he didn't stop them, Yi Qing Luo would definitely strike. This strike, he didn't know if Yi Qing Luo's body could take it or not. Furthermore, Yi Qing Luo's unwell body would also be exposed. It was as if the gods were at work. So he struck out. Now, naturally he wouldn't let Yi Qing Luo forcefully support her body, to save those people who were unimportant to him. In his eyes. Chapter 4195. Yi Qing Luo's eyes drooped as she swept a glance at the hand in front of her. Her eyes were dull, as though there was no trace of emotion. Immediately after, her pink lips curled slightly as she looked at him coldly with a smile which didn't look like a smile, ridiculing. So, what do you want to do? Tell me your motive directly. The palace lord's lips pursed tightly into a straight line. He tightened his fingers as the expression on his face changed slightly. But the hand in front of Yi Qing Luo was not put down. Why? Didn't you want me to listen to you obediently? Then stop beating around the bush. Yi Qing Luo only gave a ridiculing smile as her eyes were cold. You can waste time, but my brothers can't. The palace lord still didn't move. I can assure you of their safety. Yi Qing Luo sneered, but I don't believe you. Yi Qing Luo. The palace lord's expression sunk, as though he was angered. Yi Qing Luo's expression remained unchanged as her eyes turned chilly. The aura which exploded around her was filled with alienation which made one unable to get close to her. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace could see it. Yi Qing Luo was angry. Because the palace lord had kidnapped those brothers whom she cared about. So she was angry. And she was extremely angry. Looking at the young lady's anger and the ridicule on her lips. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace found it hard to breathe. Palace lord, why do you need to talk terms with her? Hall Master Wu Yan saw that the palace lord of Abyss Palace's attitude towards Yi Qing Luo was obviously not right as he immediately spoke out, half probing and half reminding, she's alone now, so as long as these people are still in our hands, we can do whatever we want. Her words had just ended. Then, he felt an ice-cold chill coming from the front. Whole head Wu Yan trembled slightly as she met with the palace lord's icy cold eyes. Her heart skipped a beat. Why do you need to butt in on this palace lord's matters? The palace lord's dignified voice was filled with anger. The profound energy was majestic, like a sharp blade. Whole head Wu Yan gave a dull moan as his body flew out. His body fell to the ground and rolled in a circle. She propped herself up on the ground and raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. She looked at the palace master of Secluded Darkness Palace in horror. No matter how stupid she was. It could also be seen, this palace lord of Secluded Gloom Palace's intentions towards Yi Qing Luo. For Yi Qing Luo, he stopped Miss Bai from taking action against those 10 over people. He even hit young Miss Bai instead. Wasn't this obvious, taking revenge for Yi Qing Luo? Palace lord he, actually, liked Yi Qing Luo. Moreover, their relationship was obviously not shallow. Wasn't Yi Qing Luo the person whom Secluded Darkness Palace wanted to deal with? The third elder was also stunned by the scene before him. She glanced at the palace master of the secluded palace, then at the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall. She immediately spoke to ease the atmosphere. She went to the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall and helped him up. She said, "The palace master has his own plans for what to do. We just need to follow his orders." Her words didn't get a look from the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. The third elder hurriedly supported the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall and retreated to one side. He tugged the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall, indicating for her not to open her mouth temporarily. His gaze seemed to be pointing at Bai Mei, who was standing by the side with her half-squinted eyes. Hall head Wu Yan understood his meaning as she fiercely wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Looking at that side, the palace lord of the Netherworld Palace was still talking to Yi Qing Luo. But after receiving Yi Qing Luo's expressionless reply, his expression turned extremely gloomy, but he was still suppressing his anger. Chapter 4196. Bai Mei sensed someone approaching and her eyes turned icy cold as she shot over. Hall Master Wu Yan clutched his chest in pain, his face was pale as he suppressed his voice. "Miss Bai, do you think? Palace Lord, is he?" Saying this, she pursed her lips intentionally as she hesitantly shut her mouth. Bai Mei's gaze turned even colder. Her vision looked towards the two entangled people as her red lips rose slightly. That young and beautiful face was distorted to the extreme. Her black robe fluttered without any wind. A thick black fog rolled up. On the other side, no matter how Yi Qing Luo opened her mouth, the palace lord of Ethereal Palace had not moved from his spot, preventing Yi Qing Luo from saving the 10 over people by the edge of the cliff. Looking at the pale-faced youngsters hanging by the edge, Yi Qing Luo finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She suddenly took a step forward as her eyes were filled with an icy coldness. Her bare hands moved. Her fingertips covered the azure dew bracelet. Under the cover of her palms, she made use of Old Man Sang's azure dew bracelet to release a burst of profound energy. Yi Qing Luo immediately used the azure dew bracelet to gather the profound energy and turned it into a sharp blade, heading towards the palace lord of Ethereal Palace. She had no intention to be lenient. Her expression was cold and icy cold. The palace lord of Ethereal Palace originally had no intention to dodge. But when he met with Yi Qing Luo's vibrant and captivating eyes, he understood, if he didn't dodge, this attack would definitely be aimed at his face, and it would come crashing down. There would be no hesitation at all. She had hardened her heart to kill him. His heart, at this moment, turned cold. The cold wind landed on his face. The palace lord of Ethereal Palace's figure swiftly turned as he avoided the sharp wind blade. Immediately following that, he retreated and blocked the path in front of Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's body rolled and her soft petite body slid down from Black Tortoise's back as she rolled onto the ground. The ground was filled with dead wood and grass. It was just a light stroke, but a few bright red wounds appeared on her fair and tender skin. She ignored it. She turned over and sat on the ground as she looked at Black Tortoise. "Xian Gui, bring him back." Xian Gui shook his huge head. The snake dragon-like creature on her back stared at her with 2 pairs of scarlet eyes. Her eyes were filled with worry. Yi Qing Luo shook her head at it. "I'm fine, you go ahead." Xian Gui hesitated for a moment, but still obeyed Yi Qing Luo's command and rushed to the edge of the cliff. In the meantime, in the instant when the young girl shot out that profound energy, forcing the palace master of the Netherworld Palace to dodge to the side, his expression changed drastically. His eyes instantly congealed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. "No, that's not right." This wasn't Yi Qing Luo's presence. The profound energy which attacked him was absolutely not the energy which Yi Qing Luo released. Could it be venerable sovereign? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he dispelled it. No, this was not the aura of a venerable sovereign. Instead, it was an extremely unfamiliar aura that he had never come into contact with before. Who could it be? In his heart, hundreds and thousands of thoughts were running through his head. His gaze suddenly narrowed. When he saw the girl rolling down from the black tortoise's back, he felt a chill run down his spine. He subconsciously rushed over and reached out his hand to help the girl up. But he only reached out halfway. He recalled that the young girl didn't like his touch. His hand froze in midair. What made him astonished was, Yiqing Luo had no intention to avoid him. Or rather, Yiqing Luo raised her head and looked at him coldly, her eyes filled with rejection. Chapter 4197. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace suddenly seemed to have thought of something. His deep and cold pupils suddenly constricted. Perhaps it was to test if his thinking was right or not. He suddenly stretched out both hands and placed it on the young lady's shoulder. Under his palms, the young lady's soft body had obviously stiffened. Following that, her icy cold eyes stared at him emotionlessly. She didn't evade. She didn't evade. The palace lord's brows creased slightly as his palms slid down once again, directly pressing on the young lady's back. His other hand went around the young lady's waist. With a little force. Then he carried the young lady in his arms. It was effortless. The lady in his arms had no intention to evade. Instead, after she was brought into his arms, her body leaned against him softly. The palace lord's pupils contracted as his chest started to undulate due to nervousness. Yiqing Luo, have you? He lowered his voice and said the remaining half of the sentence in a very low and deep voice. I lost my profound energy. If it was Yiqing Luo, when she saw those brothers hanging on the edge of the cliff, she would definitely fly over to save them. He didn't want his battle pets to go and bring his brothers up. Furthermore, if it was Yiqing Luo, when he stopped her from saving those youngsters, she would directly make a move. When Yiqing Luo made a move, that burst of energy was definitely not her presence. So, seeing Yiqing Luo rolling down from Black Tortoise's back without any intention to stand up, he suddenly understood. What was the reason for Yiqing Luo's series of actions, which was extremely strange? As expected, the young lady who was forcefully hugged by him turned stiff after she heard what he said. That pair of enchanting eyes that were originally covered with frost was now even more gloomy. Her face was covered with frost. Then, what does the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace want to do to me? Yiqing Luo didn't deny it, as her indifferent tone seemed as though she wasn't talking about her own matters. The Palace Lord's arms suddenly tightened. What kind of person do you think I am? His tone was full of bitterness and some suppressed forbearance. Yiqing Luo only curled her lips in disdain. Haven't the Palace of Darkness always wanted to kill me? No, to put it more accurately, the Palace of Darkness had always wanted to get me. This is a good opportunity. Are you an idiot? The man's suppressed tone revealed a hint of anger. He hung his head. Her overly long black hair spilled down a little and hung on Yiqing Luo's face. He felt a little itchy. Warm air blew towards Yiqing Luo's ears. It was different from Dmo Xian's weak and flushed face when they were in close proximity. Her body tensed up even more. It was as if all the hairs on his body were standing on end. Her entire body was filled with rejection of his approach. The Palace Lord of Abyss Palace felt even more bitter in his heart as he hugged Yiqing Luo's hands, almost wanting to rub her into his body. Knowing that you're in danger now, why did you still follow me? The suppressed anger reverberated in her ears. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she couldn't help but laughed out loud. Her long and narrow eyes raised slightly as she looked at him with a ridiculing smile. You're concerned about me? She was obviously smiling. But the words that came out of her mouth were filled with ridicule. Palace Lord of Abyss Palace, do you know that when you ask this question, it's very sarcastic? She felt that this Palace Lord of Abyss Palace really had a problem with his brain. Chapter 4198. He made it sound as if he really loved her deeply. Becoming a whore and still wanting to erect a chastity memorial? She felt that this analogy was very suitable for the secluded palace. Right from the start. Using the world group's brothers to threaten her. Now, he put on a concerned attitude, berating her angrily why she had to come. Wasn't it contradictory? Wasn't it ironic? Did he treat everyone as fools? Yi Qing Luo, must you misinterpret my meaning? The palace lord of secluded palace lowered his head as his extremely black eyes stared intently at Yi Qing Luo's face. This was the first time he used this angle to look at Yi Qing Luo. The petite body in his arms was very warm and soft. It was like soft cotton, with the fragrance of a young girl. He couldn't bear to let go of her. Even though the young lady's body was tensed up and her expression was icy cold. Every single time their eyes met. The young lady's icy cold gaze. As though it could shoot through a person. He totally couldn't feel any of the warmth and sweetness she had when she faced Dmo Xian. But, even so, his heart was full of contentment. He had dreamt of this scene countless of times in the deep dark night. Today, his dream had finally come true. He couldn't bear to let go. Even if he incurred the young lady's disgust, he couldn't bear to let go. In his mind, he recalled what his master said to him. Master said, loving someone, isn't it to get her? If you can't get her, then what's the point of this love? Master said, so what if you can't get her heart? To be able to hold her in your arms, to let her accompany you, to let her belong to you alone, isn't that enough? Initially, he couldn't understand his master's words. Now, when he held her in his arms, that satisfied feeling in his heart. He finally understood the true meaning behind his master's words. The expression on his face changed slightly. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's gaze, it revealed some treacherous and chilly greed. This gaze and the sudden change in his aura made Yi Qing Luo's heart tighten. There seemed to be something. Unknowingly, there was a change. Just as the two of them were exchanging glances, suppressing each other's aura. All of a sudden, a panicked shout could be heard, Zi Qing. Goddess Tong. Hearing the overlapping calls, Yi Zichen frowned. Yi Qing Luo used both hands to push away the palace lord's chest as she stuck her head out to look at the edge of the cliff. They saw. Xian Gui quickly rushed to the edge of the cliff and pulled them onto his back one by one. However, just as he pulled Long Yunzhan onto his back, an irresistible and chilling attack was directed at Long Yunzhan. Then, a black figure leaped into the air. His entire body was enveloped by the mysterious Yin Qi, and it was as if he was about to be devoured completely. The cold chill of the frost spread in the air. Long Yunzhan dodged. That power did not stop at all. There was a loud bang sound. The edge of the cliff exploded. The few people who were still hanging on the edge of the cliff quickly fell down. It was extremely fast. Those people were all tied up by ropes. They were unable to concentrate and stabilize their falling bodies. The target of that attack had never been Long Yunzhan. Instead, destroy the cliff. Fortunately, Xian Gui reacted quickly. Just as those people were falling, he swiftly bent down and charged towards them. Xian Gui moved. The black figure also followed closely behind. The overbearing dark Yin Qi shot out. Chapter 4199. Group Leader. Seeing that figure falling down, the crowd immediately cried out in panic. It was Long Yun-jan. Just as that burst of overbearing profound yin-chi landed. Using his last bit of energy, he knocked the few of them aside and was caught by Xian Gui in time. As for himself, he had forcefully endured all of the mysterious yin-chi. Immediately following that, he lost all his energy and was unable to maintain his figure as he directly fell down. Just at this moment, a figure speedily dashed over. The lady's slender figure, but when she dashed towards Long Yun-jan, she hugged him tightly with both her hands. The lady's strength reduced Long Yun-jan's falling speed. The lady clenched her teeth as she held on to her last breath, hugging Long Yun-jan's totally exhausted body as she used all her strength to kick the cliff wall. Bam! Two entangled figures smashed heavily on the steep wall. The lady was below and the broken stones on the cliff wall had pierced deeply into her skin, causing numerous blood scars. The man's heavy strength was still pressing down on her body. This worsened the injury on the lady's back. This scene fell into the eyes of those the World Group mercenaries who were carried on Xian Gui's back as their hearts clenched tightly. A few cries of shock had already escaped from their mouths uncontrollably. Yiqing Luo turned her head around and looked towards the direction of the voice. She saw the scene of Tong Ziqing's lower body, which was already filled with blood. Bai Mei. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted as she clenched her teeth and squeezed out these two words. Her gaze was like a sharp blade as it shot towards the black-robed lady who was standing on the other side of the cliff. Her eyes were filled with chilliness, as though it could freeze one into ice. Bai Mei. Previously, because of a so-called young and beautiful face, she cooperated with the Palace of Darkness. In the end, she almost became the puppet of that human face of the Palace of Darkness. If it wasn't for Bai Su's appearance. At that time, she would have been long dead. Hadn't Bai Su sent her to the balance historian to be locked up? Now she actually ran out again and chose to cooperate with the Palace of Darkness once again. Changed to a young and beautiful face again. Was this what it meant to be able to sell anything just for a face? Indeed, she didn't change even in death. Have you forgotten the lesson of the Dark Abyss Palace? Now, she was still causing trouble here and hurting her friend. The girl's eyes were as dark as a deep lake. Vaguely, a few streaks of red light could be seen moving about. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei giggled. Her young and beautiful face gave off an extremely twisted and awkward feeling when she laughed. His facial features seemed to be twisted together. However, Bai Mei was completely unaware of this. She lifted her hand and gently placed her slender fingers on her lower lip. She purposely curled her lips into a charming smile. His smile was filled with thick mockery. Yiqing Luo, do you know why I came back? Her voice was sharp and grating. Every word was like a sharp knife, cutting into people's eardrums. Yiqing Luo's gaze was icy cold. Did you think that the promise that secluded Darkness Palace gave you would really be honored? You're just a tool the Dark Palace used to disgust me. So what? Bai Mei totally didn't care about Yiqing Luo's words. Her lips curled as she gave a sinister smile. As long as I can see you go to hell, even if I had to sell my soul, I'd be satisfied. Her smile became even crazier. As though she had experienced some huge stimulation. Chapter 4200. Bai Mei was still laughing. In order to save me, I didn't hesitate to hurt myself to save you. Ha ha ha, aren't you all silly? That sharp piercing laughter kept reverberating in the air. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all. She looked coldly at Bai Mei as her eyes were chilly. For someone like you who has no heart, how would you understand? I'm afraid you've never thought about your sister. Yiqing Luo looked at her with ridicule. Your sister didn't hesitate to plead with Ah Xian to let you live. But you, time and time again. chose secluded palace, to hurt your sister. My sister. Ha, is she even fit to be my sister? Mentioning Bai Su, Bai Mei's anger seemed to have been ignited as her anger surged. That slanderer was merely to torture me. If it wasn't for her. Bai Mei was so angry that her entire body was trembling, intentionally putting on a look of deep sisterly love, just to maintain your own hypocrisy. After she finished howling this sentence, she seemed to have regained her senses. The smile on her face slowly turned chilly. I don't need to understand the so-called feelings you speak of, I only want your life. Her vision shot towards the side, towards the 10 people on Xian Gui's back, who were in a sorry state. She wasn't flustered at all because Xian Gui had saved those people and lost the props to threaten Yiqing Luo. Just like that, he stood there unhurriedly. When she raised her hand, her black robe fluttered in the wind. In her palm, a black flute had appeared unknowingly. The flute was entirely black without any other colors. When she saw that black flute, Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Surely not. As though to prove her thoughts, Bai Mei placed the flute by her lips. A sharp flute sound entered everyone's ears. The world group's young men and ladies suddenly turned pale as they laid on the ground, crying out in pain. As the flute's rhythm increased, they were in even more pain as their entire bodies started to tremble. Jin Zi, Xiao Yi, Ruo Pan, Xiao Yu. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned red as she shouted out those people's names. But no one was able to give her any response. The sharp flute sound intertwined with her calls. Damn Abyss Palace. To actually use such a sinister move. Ha ha ha. Did you really think that I would let you rescue her so easily? Bai Mei looked at Yiqing Luo's expression as she laughed contentedly. This was the first time she had seen such an interesting expression on Yiqing Luo's face. What is this? The expression of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. She glared at Bai Mei fiercely. Bai Mei fiddled with the flute in her hand. The smile on her face was no longer as flattering as before. She glanced at the palace master of the Dark Palace playfully and said with a smile, "This is naturally the mission that the Venerable One secretly gave me." Hearing the word venerable, the gloomy face of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. He suppressed his anger. His eyelids drooped slightly as an apologetic expression appeared in his eyes. Yiqing Luo, this matter. I didn't know about it, I'm sorry. Yiqing Luo's scarlet eyes swept coldly towards him. His gaze was as cold as ice, without a trace of emotion. She gave a cold smile as her lips twitched. Her brothers were groaning in pain beside her ears. She said word by word in an icy cold tone, "Is there any meaning if you knew about it or not?" You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.